Okay, in the last 4, 5, 6 videos that I've uploaded, I've been working through this series down this line of thought. We started back talking about what is going on in Antarctica, and we've walked through a lot of suppressed technologies and things like that that they are using for mind control through these MK Ultra programs, and even through biology and biological sciences, through genetic engineering and breeding programs like Lebensborn. So I want to kind of tie all of that together and take it to the next level. So why are they doing this? Why do they have a breeding program and a mind control program and all of that sort of thing? And the answer is The Black Awakening. This is a book by Russ Dizdar, and I know most of you know very well who he is. If you're on this channel, you probably know all about Russ Dizdar. But for those who don't, he is our brother in Christ, and his specific calling is working with victims of these mind control programs, victims of satanic ritual abuse. For the last 40 years or more, really now, he has been working with the survivors of these SRA families. As he took these victims through deprogramming and deliverance, he began to unveil a common theme, and that is this coming rise of the satanic super soldier, which amounts to what we would call sleeper cells, that they have pre-programmed sleeper cells like Manchurian candidates everywhere, just waiting for their trigger command to launch, quote unquote, the event, which is the sudden ambush and overthrow of the governments of the world and the implementation of the Antichrist regime, which we call the New World Order. And they describe an event that's quite a bit different than we see in, say, the Red Dawn movies. Like in Red Dawn, it was just portrayed as a military invasion, and the teacher was caught off guard, the students were caught off guard, it was just an ambush. They say the event that they have planned has pre-positioned the teachers, has pre-positioned people all the way down to the local level. So while we're looking at the Illuminati politicians and the rich elitists, we're thinking they're just elitists. They're not just elitists. They have structured it so precisely and diabolically that they have positioned operatives all the way down at the lowest levels in every industry, every profession, every local government, that type of thing. So when the day comes for the takeover, instead of seeing things like this, where the teacher rises up and wants to protect the children and what's going on, it'll be completely different. The invasion will come, and the professors and teachers will tell their children to remain seated, and they will just walk right in. They will walk right in and take control of the classrooms. They will walk right in and take control of the governments. They will take control of the manufacturing plants because the CEOs are already in the cabal. They're already here. The invasion has honestly already happened. The changeover, the event, the externalization of the hierarchy to where we acknowledge that they're the ones in control. That's really all we're waiting on. Now, I know right about here, people are going to say, that's impossible. How could they be so organized that they would be able to infiltrate all the way down to every single small town? How could there be that many of them? And how could they organize such a thing? Well, again, I have to tell you, this is not a theory. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a fact. Look at the Masonic lodges in every small town. I'm showing you pictures of them. Go to your phone book right now, Google it, search it, and find out, where are these towns? Where are the small towns that don't have a Masonic lodge or a chapter of the Masonic lodge? So if you don't think that organizations could possibly be so big and so vast and infiltrate not just the big city of New York, but down to every single small town, and all still remain part of one entity that answer to the Grand Poobah, well, you're just not in touch with reality, because it's a fact that they have done it, and you can see it right here. Yes, it is very possible for these covens to be so organized and answer to a central power, and yet still reach their tentacles into every small community in America at least, but worldwide. This is worldwide. but I can only speak from here in America and what I see on my streets in our towns. And yes, it's completely possible. They are in every small town, and it goes beyond just the lodges, because then they go out and recruit all of the business owners, all of the local politicians, anybody who has any influence in the town. They go directly toward them. They're taught to target them and recruit them. Of course, they're taught at the very lower levels because it's compartmentalized. They don't have any idea that they are organizing this thing for this coven. At the lower levels, they believe, oh, this is just a great fraternity. It's a brotherhood where we get all of the leaders in the town, right? Who doesn't want to hobnob with the leaders in the town? But this is how it's done. It's very real. And these covens do go out and infiltrate every small town and recruit all of the leaders in that town. Some of them rise through the ranks and become loyal. Others never really rise through the ranks. So they probably will be okay. But they probably need deliverance if they've been practicing these rituals. And it's not just the Masonic lodges. Another way that they infiltrate all the way down to the local level from a centralized government is just that, government. They use government. So we all have local governments, and then we have state governments, and then we have federal governments, and then they're trying to establish the United Nations, which is the world government. And they're constantly pushing for every lower level to give up sovereignty. So they want the United States to renounce its sovereignty, and everything from, say, gun control laws to the World Court to all of that will be handled by the United Nations, which we know is a conglomerate of tyrants. They're almost all dictators. They hate freedom. Any nation that has, this pseudo-democracy thing going, or a republic like we have, they absolutely want us to renounce sovereignty and come under their structure of dictatorship. And again, they've been working on that for generations, because the United States of America was exactly that. At one time, the states were almost like independent nations. They had sovereignty, state sovereignty, to run their communities and their state the way their people believed and wanted. But now we see they've already accomplished that at those lower levels. So the United States federal government has usurped that sovereignty, and they've begun telling the states what to do instead of the states' representatives telling the federal government what to do. So that we the people, for the people, by the people thing has already been overthrown. It's just on paper at this point. And that goes all the way down to every single local community. If you want to have a school in a small town, I lived in a town of 700. That's a true story. The sign said when you drove into town, population 700. So if that town, their school system, those 700 people decided that they wanted to teach the Holy Bible in their curriculum, in their public education system, and give their children a broad view of all of world culture, they still would not be allowed to do that. The federal government would intervene. The ACLU, which is the legal arm of the cabal, would come in and say, no, we ban it. It doesn't matter what you 700 people want to teach your children. You will not teach it because we choose which books are banned and all of that type of thing. So we have to come to terms with the fact we're all fighting for freedom and privacy and things like that. And all of those things are already gone. So anyway, my point is that it's not just the Masonic lodges. They have also infiltrated all the way down to the local level through what we call government. So it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. This is not just an American thing. The cult has overlaid themselves on top of all the tribes of humanity and made their cult our culture. So that's one thing I've noticed in the truther community. People have gotten really hung up on the Masonic lodges, and they want to prove, oh, this politician or this preacher or this person is a member of the Masons. It doesn't matter. There are tons of cabal members that they don't need the Masonic channels to do their coven stuff. This satanic cult predates Masonry. They created those societies as just one arm, one tentacle of their cult of the quote unquote ancient ones. Masonry is just one infrastructure that they use to infiltrate all the way down to local levels in their power structure. Government is another one. They're not mutually exclusive. There's a lot of crossover in those secret societies and that type of thing, but it's not mandatory that everybody has to come up the Masonic way. There are plenty of satanic cult members who don't need to come through Masonry. They come through every single culture. Another way they infiltrate all the way down to the local levels is through church organizations. Like we know the Catholic Church is a big one. They try to have a Catholic church in every town, in every city that answers to a central command called the Vatican. And even then, just like the Masonic lodges, this Jesuit branch of this ancient cult, they are not at the top of the pyramid. They are just one more arm of this ancient cult. I'll do the timeline a little later, but I've pointed out in this series several times in every video I try to touch on it. There's a reason why the Pope and the cardinals and the Catholic power structure wear Jewish yarmulkes. This is not a coincidence. This infiltration traces all the way back to what we call the Ashkenazi Jews, where we get the term Nazi, and they're not really Jews at all. I've gone through all that in the other videos. Please go back and watch them if you haven't already. And we also see that Germanic culture from the Germanic Goths. That's where we get the term Gothic, and that's why we see the Gothic cathedrals during that era that are covered in statues of demons and gargoyles and witches and all of that type of thing. But again, this thing predates Germany. It even predates what we call the Ashkenazi Jews and goes back to the Sabbateans and further back. So we'll get into all that later. This cult has been infiltrating already existing organizations as well as setting up their own organizations. And just like in the Masonic lodges, I don't think every Catholic who goes to a Catholic church is in on this or is evil or anything like that. Of course not. There's lots of people who love Jesus Christ and are seeking him, but have been led astray into these organizations like the Catholic Church. And if you are in the Catholic Church, you need to realize it's time to come out. Come out of Babylon. Now's the time. There are plenty of remnant believers in Jesus Christ that you can fellowship with, but no, the hierarchy, the bureaucracy of the Catholic Church is rotten to the core, and they are Satanists. And as you can see from this architecture of the serpent's head, they have become very overt, very open with their serpent worship, which is the way their cults did it in ancient times. They would always have the serpent on their staff or the serpent on their forehead. Their headdresses and armor always show that their serpent god was on their head. But their allegiance from culture to culture varies in their expression. You take like the Hindu gods, they'll be riding on serpents, or they'll be surrounded by serpents. They'll have serpents wrapped all around their arms and body. Just completely encompassed in that spirit that they serve. They were open about it. And we're seeing that again in today's society in a modern way, that they're becoming more and more open about it as they externalize the hierarchy. But my point is, as far as the placement of operatives for the Black Awakening and these programs that are going on, it doesn't just come through Freemasonry. They infiltrate down to the local levels and answer to a centralized government through many tentacles. Another way that they have infiltrated and transplanted themselves throughout the entire world is through industry. We know that a lot of the heads of these major corporations, that's why we always talk about the military-industrial complex, that they have taken over these industries. They have such small numbers. It's amazing that they've done this, because it's not that everybody in the whole corporation is in on it, but they have taken over the decision-making levels, the top levels, the CEOs and things like that of these corporations. So all of these people below them on the corporation are serving this agenda and enriching these people, making minimum wage and stuff, enriching these, and they don't even realize that they are a sort of slave race, quote unquote, human resource for these parasites. They just think, oh, I hope I get a raise to $8 an hour. If I'm going to sell my life to these people, I at least want to get $10 an hour for it, or so much per year on salary or whatever. But they never stop to think, wait a second, why am I selling my life to these people? What is this? That can they buy me? Did they just buy my life? I'm going to spend my life doing something I hate, sitting in a cubicle so these people become billionaires? They just don't think about it because they're still in the trance. They were born into it. That's why these people are so diabolical to have done this generationally. Because if you did all of this as sort of an infiltration, a coup d'etat in one generation, everybody would see. But they're very, very diabolical. So most of us, well, all of us, were born into it. We think it's normal to be called a resource like coal or oil. We're like, oh yeah, report to Human Resources Office. I'm just a resource for this corporation, high-tech slave trade. And it just never occurs to them, to question it because they were born into it, which should give us some compassion and understanding for these people in these SRA families who are brought up in this satanic ritual abuse, trauma-based mind control, family, horrific Nazi experiment thing, because they also were born into it. And they've had it a lot worse than we've had it. So it's very, very hard for them to defect. It's almost impossible. But anyway, corporations, yes, the corporations are another way that they have taken total control all the way down to the local level. If you go back through history and research it and watch it play out from the beginning of the industrial age till now, you can see that they have merged everything into one central government, but it's considered corporations, and they keep some of them separate and they merge a lot of them publicly. But everybody knows that it doesn't matter. Every farm in America, if you're getting Tyson chicken or you're getting generic chicken or you're getting it from this farm or that farm, they've all been bought up by these conglomerates. And it's the same way with all of the media. You might think, oh, I'm watching HBO and it's a different channel than ESPN, or it's a different channel than the military history channel on A&E, or I'm watching Chiller, I'm just watching scary movies or sci-fi movies, or I'm just watching children's shows. My kid, he's just watching Disney, or they're just watching MTV. I'm just watching music. No, what you're watching is a program. You're being programmed. These are all owned by the same people. And although monopolies are illegal, so they don't openly say that all of these nodes or nerve centers are also essentially owned by one central command. And that's why they hate free speech so much. That's why they hate us so much. And they're actively, through technology and algorithms and manual reviews and everything, removing us from even social media, not just YouTube where you broadcast, but other places where you can just like post on your status wall. You can just say your feelings. Like they don't even want that. They are censoring and monitoring Twitter and Facebook and YouTube to remove all of us and calling us fake news and, all the same stuff, demonizing us and all of that, because we're the last bastion. We're the last bastion. We are the ones who refuse to take part in their echo chamber. They don't want any dissenting voice, because besides us, they have captured the broadcast, the voice of humanity down to the minute local levels. You think you have local news? Really?
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same things that are true without checking facts first. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
So it's just a fact. Whether people can cope with that or not, it's a fact. These are scripts that they're given. This is not a conspiracy theory. You just saw it with your own eyes. You know it goes on. Television programs are just that. They are called programs because they're programs. They are designed to program your brains like a computer. And we're allowing it. It's like, if you haven't watched the last video about hypnotism and the trance state and Hollywood, please go back and watch that. It's this one right here with the hypnotized eye looking thumbnail, and it talks about the world stage and cults and the hive mind and all of that type of thing. It's the part 2 to the breeding program one. If you're watching on my backup channel, then this thumbnail will look like puzzle pieces, putting puzzle pieces together. We have to break free of their programming. This is MK Ultra programming coming through all of these nerve centers right into our brains. It's a script. They are programming us. So I want to get into some of these reports, not just the ones that Russ talks about, because this goes back, way back through ancient history, that they have been building up to this point where their control network is sufficiently in place that they can launch it. Like I always say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So in this series, I've been trying to pick a couple of motion pictures for each one to give us a general sort of picture in our minds of this event. And in the last one, I was talking about the Truman Show meets They Live. So that could give you sort of a concept. I mean, if they're going to do all of this predictive programming, we might as well use it for good. So in this particular video, for this part, talking about the event, the two that came to mind were, it's sort of like Red Dawn. So if you've seen both of those, then you have a concept of how these things happen. And in Rosemary's Baby, how she was being drugged and all of the heads of the community were in on it and stuff like that. You're going to see a lot of similarities when I start playing the clips of interviews from these SRA survivors. In fact, at the very end of the first one, the breeding program video, the Transagenda and Breeding Program Age of Deceit video, and I had the clips from the super soldier at the end, his testimony. That super soldier testimony was Max Spears, but he is now dead. He died while on the circuit trying to tell this story, just like Phil Schneider. And this was one thing he mentioned specifically, was that he would go to people's houses and they would offer him a drink and it would be drugged. And then he would sort of be coming to while they were doing this ritual on him, trying to put this entity in him and things like that. So anyway, as we move forward talking about this Black Awakening, those are the two. This is sort of like Rosemary's Baby meets Red Dawn. So now I want to get down to the super soldiers, to the individual sleeper cell type people, and talk about that a little bit. But this is a picture from Red Dawn. This is still shot from Red Dawn when they go into the town, and you can see there's still people eating in the subway amidst all of this. And the mayor of the town was a communist sympathizer, so other than lose control, he just kind of became one of them. So that's sort of what I'm talking about here, only they're not going to have to convert these people. These people are already part of the network and in place in the communities, so they will do that. And the reason I chose this picture, although it seems sort of meaningless in the scheme of things, was that it specifically reminded me of a prophetic vision that God had given me years and years ago. And that it really shocked me that after the event had begun and it was darkness, the power was out in the towns, it was like all of this sort of thing. And I was surprised that Walmart and McDonald's were still open amidst all this. All the other businesses were closed. All the locally owned businesses were closed. It was like a ghost town everywhere. But these big corporations like Walmart and McDonald's, they had some sort of backup generators or something, and they were involved, they were functioning through the midst of all of this. And at the time, I couldn't really make sense of that. But now, as I've done my research and everything, yeah, it makes perfect sense. So I've done several videos on that, Walmart's collusion in all of this, not just the Casa Padre thing and what we're seeing with DHS. That was more of a sort of stepping stone confirmation. But this video right here, Walmart FEMA exposed. America needs to see this, new 2018. That's just a 14-minute video, but it really talks about who Sam Walton is, who he really is. He was involved in the concentration camps during World War II. And then he sets up this distribution network all across America, and then how it's more, and elsewhere, and how that then is morphed into them having these FEMA response teams. So I think it's really, really important that people watch this. I also included in there a handful of 5 or 6 people's dreams or visions, totally unrelated people who all had dreams and visions of Walmarts being used as these sort of refugee camps because they were the ones who had the supplies. So the masses went to them willingly. So since we just went over all of the corporate structure all the way down to the local levels, I think it's important to mention Walmart. Walmart is absolutely one of those. And this is a syndicate that was set up, a system that was put in place purposefully. And Sam Walton worked for the intelligence community, and he specialized in supervising concentration camps here in America. Here in America. Remember during World War II, after Pearl Harbor was bombed, and we set up these, what they didn't call them concentration camps, but they rounded up all of the Japanese people and some German people and all of that. All that is in this video. So Sam Walton was in charge of those camps. And then after World War II, he began setting up this Walmart network that we see now, all the way down to the local level. And these interviews are also really eerie to me because what they're saying is exactly what God showed me in some of my prophetic glimpses over the years. And I'm not one who gets a ton. I don't have prophetic dreams every night or every week or every month. But, you know, sometimes it'll be 5 years in between. Usually if I need a course correction, if God has to do something drastic to intervene, or there's some part of my destiny that I'm just not seeing, that I don't know about, and then he will show me, and then I can research it, which is exactly how I came across most of this, because God shows me something that is completely out of left field for me in my frame of reference, and then I research it and find out that it's absolutely true. So anyway, talking about these satanic super soldiers, I had I posted this back in 2015, but I think I had the vision a year or so before I posted it. So this is about 5 years ago. And I had this vision about martial law, that it had started with this, what they would call the Black Awakening. It didn't start with the sort of Red Dawn tanks on the street or anything like that. The people I saw, and I had, you can see here, End Time Dream Vision, ISIS attack on American interstates. I interpreted that at the time as ISIS because they were all dressed in black, and that was really all the only frame of reference I had. But now in hindsight, you know, Antifa, they weren't really getting any press at all before Trump got in office. So, but it's that same sort of all dressed in black mob mentality, like terrorist sleeper cell type deal. But that's exactly what I saw. And the attack that I saw was on American interstates. And it happened all across the United States of America at the same time. I can't speak for the rest of the world. In my vision, I was just shown what happened in America. But anyway, then the vision jumps forward to some time in the future, and I was shown how they had taken over the manufacturing plants, and none of this made sense to me at all when I was seeing it. And that we weren't getting, they were also in like the police departments, and we knew the military wasn't going to help us either. It was like the citizens were on their own, sort of like Red Dawn, you know, with the Mavericks or whatever, what are they called? The Wolverines. But yeah, so we were out in the rural areas in the country, and all the young men had come together who knew how to use their hunting rifles and knew how to use weapons. And we had maps laid out on the tables, like people's kitchen tables, and we were defending ourselves. And you can see I posted these two at the same time. Then, like a week later after that, or a little while after that, I got another prophetic vision from God. And I was looking out that's this one, Warning Dream Vision, End Time Riots, Martial Law, Concentration Work Camps, Chinese Soldiers. And in that one, I was looking out my window, and there were riots on the street. People were like, they were resisting police and like throwing things at them. And it culminated in all of these vehicles, these sort of Humvee looking vehicles came into the neighborhood, and they were parked like every 2 blocks. And these soldiers were coming to the house, like 2 by 2 to every house. And then that one again jumps forward in time several months, maybe, I mean, could have even been a year. There was a lot of time covered in that vision. And later on, we were on buses. We were taken on buses. My family was, and other families, to these concentration work camps. And we were building little like electronic parts at tables. And there were Chinese soldiers with guns standing guard over us. And then even later on, I had another vision where Russia was involved and they had taken over hospitals and converted them into processing centers. So that always seemed like that's a lot going on. But that's what these SRA escapees from these Illuminati families have been saying. They're saying that they've taken over the military, or at least that they have high-ranking operatives in the military. And that's what we saw during World War II. Emperor Hirohito was never prosecuted because the investigation revealed that it was his military was not following his command. His military had gone rogue. And the generals in the military were commanding the people below them. So they were launching a war against Emperor Hirohito's rule. And we're seeing that now. We have a president, but the services below him refuse to honor him in any way. They're trying to do a coup. They're trying to get rid of him because they want to run the country the way they want to run the country, and they won't acknowledge him as the elected president. Whether you believe there's really elections or not, the case is very similar to what we saw with Emperor Hirohito. And at the same time, another iteration of that, done slightly differently, was going on in Germany, where Hitler didn't take over the existing military. That's not the way that happened. He started his own sort of force that was going on the same time as the military. And so he had the brown shirts, and then there was Germany's actual military. They were two different things. So there was resistance there at first. He didn't go through the channels and just like he was the president of Germany and he had control of the military. No, he started his own military force. And worldwide, we just sort of call them the Men in Black. They're Men in Black. We don't know who they are. They just sort of show up. If you discover something or invent something that could actually benefit humanity, they just sort of show up and take it and silence you. Or if you witness these Nephilim or cryptid hybrid creatures, whether it's a quote unquote alien or if it's a Sasquatch or something, they just sort of show up, these Men in Black. It's this secret military. It's the secret military. It's the deep state, deeper than the deep state, secret military. And that's not to say that they don't have operatives in our military. Of course they do. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. But how people believe that there are white hats in the military who have recognized this corruption and are trying to weed it out. And that's why all these firings in the FBI, and that's why the FBI is fighting Trump so hard, which I don't doubt one bit, because I did a video, where is it? This one, The Raid, Eerie Similarities of Trump versus the FBI and JFK versus J. Edgar Hoover. Because, J. Edgar Hoover had secret files on everybody, was blackmailing everybody, and stood in the way every chance he got when JFK tried to fight organized crime, syndicates, and the mafia, and the communist weapon running, and all that. And J. Edgar Hoover was a known homosexual. He dressed up in women's clothes and all sorts of, so that's all in that video if you guys want to watch it. The actual, in their own words, people, testimony from that era, women and society people who said, yeah, absolutely, I saw him doing that. So again, the trans agenda, it's always been present. We just kind of overlook it. People are like, I don't want to think about J. Edgar Hoover dressing up in a dress and calling himself Mary. Like, that's really gross. And now they're like, okay, I can accept that he was a homosexual, and all those pictures of him with his quote unquote partner and all of that. But at the time and throughout all these eras, people have just denied this trans agenda was part of reality, but it has always been present. But as far as the white hats, whether you believe that QAnon has anything to do with the white hats or any of that is really irrelevant. There are good people in our military, absolutely. And do I believe that some of these people might have organized and be covertly fighting this satanic cult? Absolutely, because look back at Ted Gunderson. I mean, we're going back decades and decades. Again, he's dead now, but when he was doing it, he was fighting Satanism. That's what it was. The McMartin preschool case, it was the Franklin cover-up, all the child trafficking. He was fighting it decades and decades ago, long before QAnon, anyone had ever heard of QAnon last October. There are people in the FBI, and even after he retired, he referred cases to what he called not white hats, but people in the FBI that he knew could be trusted and were helping him research these satanic cults that were real, although the mainstream would not take this seriously. And of course, now we know because a lot of the mainstream are them. Instead, they just sort of started a propaganda campaign called Satanic Panic to make everybody look crazy who came forward and said, yes, yes, I came up in a family like that. Yes, I saw those rituals. Yes, this is true. All of the children, even. In the Johnny Gosch case, the Bonacci kid who testified, they put him in jail for perjury because he testified against these powerful politicians. Obviously, it was a corrupt judge who was in the cabal. And they punished the children who were victims of the sex trafficking and put them in jail. True story. We'll get into the Johnny Gosch case here in a second too. But my point is, there really are white hats, whether that has anything to do with the QAnon phenomenon or not. These people exist. You can go back and watch Ted Gunderson used his life. He was constantly exposing not just corruption, not political corruption. He was exposing Satanism. Satanism. He called it what it was all those decades ago. It's Satanism. And what these SRA insiders are saying is going to happen, that there are going to be these lower level super soldier ambushes, and it's going to lead to civil unrest, and there's going to be martial law declared eventually, that there's a domino effect event that is set up. It's not going to be like one event. It's going to be a domino effect, a series of events, like these ambushes that destabilizes America, and then we have to have martial law, and then the martial law turns into basically an occupation when UN peacekeepers and other forces come in and under the guise of trying to help us or whatever, and they occupy us. And then further down the line, they start moving us into ghettos and concentration camps, and which is exactly what we see with Agenda 21 and 2030, is that exactly how the Nazis first moved the Jews into ghettos before they put them on the trains into camps. First, they corralled them into certain living areas. The same way the Native American Indians were corralled into reservations. Well, they're doing it to all of us now, and that's Agenda 21. They have these sanctioned areas, these ghettos or reservations, to herd the survivors into. And from the looks of the maps and the legislation and how it's going is that they get all of the land. And then there will be little dots of concentrations of us, concentration camps, even if they are, the size of an entire reservation. I don't know exactly how that'll play out in all areas, but you can, research Agenda 21 and you can see this is precisely what they're doing, is making the majority of the land off limits to us. It's theirs. It's government land. But if I had to guess, I would say that probably that phase of the roundup won't happen until the nations in the axis of evil actually invade our coastlines and come in. Anybody who follows prophecy knows that everybody, tons of people for decades and decades have reported God showing them exactly that. We know that's coming. And I really think that'll come before people are herded into these regions. I think the martial law part and the chaos isn't going to lead immediately to these concentration camps. And the vision that I personally had that I was telling you guys about a few minutes ago, that was the order of events. There was martial law first because of the civil unrest and something that was going on, but we were still in our homes at that time. And it was several months later in the vision, it was several months later that we got the knock on the door and we had to get on the buses, and they were taking us to these concentration areas. And I think that's a pretty standard interpretation. Most people believe that, of course, these forces are going to invade us when we're at our weakest, when we're in the middle of a crisis, whether that is recovering from some huge natural disaster, some massive earthquake, the New Madrid fault line or something. Everybody seems to agree that the actual invasion from these other nations who are part of the axis of evil won't come until we are completely weakened in a state of disarray already. And at that point, we'll be under the dictatorship of the Antichrist. And honestly, there's a pretty big chance that there's even a step above that to the Antichrist regime, and that's the introduction of the UFO disclosure. Because it appears that these UFO abductees have been programmed for generations with this literally, they report being made to sit in front of screens and watch what the quote unquote aliens are showing them, that there's these cataclysms coming to the world and nuclear war is coming, and these aliens are going to be our saviors. Not only did they seed the earth, and that's why, humans aren't monkeys anymore, because they're our creators, but they're also our saviors. And that's right, that's Antichrist. They're claiming to be God, the savior and creator. And that's when they step in and bring order out of chaos. They're going to save the dumb humans from destroying themselves, and they have the technology to stop the nuclear war. And I've done lots of videos on that, how all of these UFO incidents where they'll hover over nuclear missile silos and deactivate or change the codes, frequency hack, wirelessly frequency hack our missile silos. And there's been tons of them. The military men who witnessed it have testified and everything. But if you want to look into it, a few of them are the Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1967, Minot Air Force Base in 67 and 68. There were 10 nuclear silos, or 10 nukes in silos that were deactivated sequentially. There were also British missiles deactivated. And remember the Rendlesham Forest incident? That was a nuclear facility. And it also happened in Russia. I mean, it's happened all over the world, but those are a few if you want to get your feet wet. I mean, and obviously that's to manipulate and socially engineer the decisions of the human militaries in all of these nations, because it's happened in multiple nations. Maybe those were nations that they were having trouble coming into peace treaties with, or getting the governments to work with them or something. And it was a show of force that, hey, you don't have anything that'll work against us, or, who knows. But anyway, I'm saying that after the human war starts, then the order out of chaos is coming from this UFO disclosure, which again reminds me right here, this end time dream that I had. This was posted 2 years ago. It only got 884 views, so I wonder what that's all about. But it's end time dream, UFOs, stores closed, Walmart, red pink atmosphere. I had this vision of that. This was the one I was talking about, where I was shocked that Walmart was still open and McDonald's was open, and because the atmosphere, this event was huge, like we're seeing now with the purple skies and all this plasma stuff, this plasma physics that's going on, like a static ball. We're seeing the sky flash and turn magenta and red, and like the aurora borealis, the northern lights, everywhere, like just in the middle of the country, they're everywhere, because there's something going on. This is a celestial event. But anyway, years and years ago, before the purple skies, I was shown in a vision that this is what the skies would look like. And I put it in this video, even though nobody watched it. It's there recorded, that it looked like the aurora borealis over Illinois. And there was no power. The power was out. So There, I don't know if that brought down the cloaking shields or something that these UFOs were using. I don't know, but I saw in the sky these things zipping around, zigzagging around all over the place. And it was like disclosure. They weren't like walking around in the streets or anything, but it was, everybody knew, like, hey, this is now we know. Here they are. They're everywhere. What's going to happen? What is going to happen? And I was talking to a guy in the dream about it, and he about it being the end times, and he's like, my mom still doesn't believe that, you know. And she was a worker. She was a worker at, I think, Walmart, and she was still going to work instead of being with her family. 'Cause she could not believe it was the end time. She was like, this is just a thing, and it's the next stage, you know, in human evolution, and you know, everything's going to be fine. We just need to hold tight. And absolutely would not. He was saying that he couldn't reason with her, that she couldn't believe that this was the end of the world and Jesus Christ was coming, even at that point when it was like pitch blackness, the skies had changed colors, there's UFOs darting everywhere, there was like an EMP or a solar flare, there's no power anywhere, everything, the entire economy had collapsed, every store was closed except these couple of major ones that were supplying everybody, and she still was going to work saying, oh, it's no big deal, it's going to be fine. But anyway, all the Walmart videos and the ones I've mentioned about my visions and stuff, I'll put those links down below in the description box. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can go and watch. But I don't have any way to vet like Svali's testimony or these different whistleblowers' testimony other than what God himself has shown me. And that's basically how I vet everything. So when I hear certain testimonies of these really famous whistleblowers that are going around stuff and it contradicts things that the Lord has already shown me, you know, that's how I vet things. So that's why I chose Svali and some of these other testimonies I'm getting ready to show you guys, is because they completely explain everything that the Lord has shown me is coming. So I want to start weaving together some of these different testimonies from totally different people, decades apart, centuries apart even. I'm going to go all the way back to Count Saint Germain, who supposedly was an immortal that they kept from these secret societies that kept popping up throughout Europe in the records. So there's a lot of strange mysteries that have gone on in history that we've just kind of counted as anomalies or myths or whatever. And I want to weave all those together using the testimonies of Illuminati whistleblowers like Svali, using the testimonies of people who have come out of witchcraft covens and MK Ultra programs like Mary Lou Lake, and using the research of incredible researchers like Russ Dizdar and his 40 years of experience with these SRA victims. Because doing that, when you take everything into consideration, all of the records, all of the testimony, all of ancient history, we can see that there is one thread that runs through the entire picture. There is a thread of truth that is mind-boggling. And that truth is that there is a cabal, a satanic coven, who has taken over the world through covert crime syndicate type means. And they are so sophisticated, they run like a corporation, like organized crime. I mean, that's what it is. That's what the family is. So like I've pointed out in the earlier videos in this series, is that we have to escape this reductionist thinking that everybody wants to focus on, oh, Rothschild, 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 or Masons, the Freemasons, whatever it is. And I want to point out, to understand what we're up against, we need to see this in the context of what it really is, and the enormity of what it really is. And the Rothschilds are just one node. They call them nerve centers, and how the coven functioned as a corporation. So they would have administrative offices in, say, Virginia, and they would have training offices in San Diego, and they were structured just like a corporation. So they did have banking centers. The Rothschilds do play a huge part in the banking, in the central banking part of the takeover, but that's just one part of the takeover. But just to lay the foundation as we start to discuss this information, I want to get your mind thinking bigger. That this isn't just about the Rothschilds. It's not about Freemasons. It's not about the Jesuits even. It's not even about the Ashkenazi Jews. And we've talked about all of those different tentacles of this cabal over the last several videos. But now I want to take it the step higher, because beyond that, all of those nodes that we have uncovered and discussed, they are part of a bigger beast. And to really even understand the Holy Scriptures, we have to perceive this for what it is. This is a war against humanity. This is not a geographical war. This is a war against all of humanity. And even further, let's take it a step further. This transcends humanity. So we are not just in a war to save humanity from extinction. We are one part of a war that is going on in higher dimensions. There was a rebellion in heavenly dimensions, and this entity is trying to take control. We know that's not going to happen, but we still have to do our part. And we are not just fighting for humanity, we are fighting for our God, the Most High God, the Holy One, because we don't want hell. We don't want hell on earth. And it's up to us as the embodiment of the Holy Spirit to restore and subdue the earth and bring it back to utopia. And they are working to turn it into hell. So when we say things like, boy, world's going to hell in a handbasket, no, it really is. This is a war for this realm, a spiritual war. This isn't just a religion, the book of Revelation. Oh yeah, Armageddon's coming. No, hey, do you know what that means? That there is about to be a standoff between the forces of Satan and the forces of Jesus Christ that will culminate in the battle of Armageddon? Well, if you haven't pondered the magnitude of that, hopefully by the time we get done with this video, you will. There are kings of the earth that will gather together with the Antichrist, and they will literally, they are so arrogant, they literally believe that they can stop the return of Christ. They have been working for generations on every possible means, spiritual, technological. You go to the Montauk Project, they're coming at him through time travel, trying to change history through time travel, messing with the actual dimensional matrix. They've practiced with frequency technologies, opening stargates, closing stargates. Why is it on Saturn that all of a sudden we see this hexagon on the top? What does that mean? What is happening? Is the sun a portal? What's happening? Well, they know what's happening, and they are using all of these interdimensional technologies from the Nephilim races that we call, the aliens, to try and beat God. It's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable story that the Bible says culminates in all of the armies of the Antichrist and the nations who have rebelled against God coming together in the valley of Megiddo. That's where we get the term Armageddon, that they all come together in the valley of Megiddo to try to stop the return of Jesus Christ. They think they can reign in this world and they can stop his return. So I'm going to go into those technologies and the Vatican telescopes. What are they looking at? What are they looking for up there? What is happening? How does everything that we see going on around us that just seems so bizarre, how does it really fit together and make perfect sense? And make no mistake, once you break free of their programming, of their trance, of their mind control, you can see that all of history does make sense. History is his story. It's always been all about the return of Christ. It's always been all about the redemption of this world, this dimension. This is his story, and it is the greatest story ever told. This is what they're hiding from you. This is the forbidden history. They're hiding God. They're hiding the meaning of life. There's a reason why they ban the Bible from public education. While they'll teach any other pagan religions, they teach Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, in literature, in history, and lots of different curriculums, but not the Bible. No, it is strictly banned with pinpoint accuracy. This is the forbidden history. They don't want you to know the meaning of life. They don't want you to know who you are and why you're here. And why would they? Of course, they don't want the people of God assembling and fighting them in any way, resisting them even in any way. No, their deception is they convince you there isn't an enemy. Don't worry, you don't have any enemies. The devil doesn't even exist. That's their tactic. That's what the Bible says. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. While people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come upon them suddenly, as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. And that's the plan. It's an ambush. It's an ambush. They are planning an ambush. It's called the Black Awakening, with all of these sleeper cells and so much more. And the whole time they're convincing you, oh, those crazy conspiracy theorists. And that's what the Bible says. God says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Despite the fact that we are out here teaching and preaching day and night, trying to convey the truth, these people who are completely brainwashed by their professors and by the cabal operatives at all levels, they are oblivious. They are completely oblivious. And while they're dumbing down our human children, they're preparing their children. In this interview I'm getting ready to play you, Svali talks about how every child by the age of 8 can take their weapon apart. And I've been in boot camp, so I know exactly what she's talking about, how they teach you to break your weapon down in a certain amount of time and break it down really fast and put it back together really fast. She's talking about being trained to do that before she was 8 years old. And likewise were her children taught. She said all of the children are. She said even if they test the children and profile them to which sort of thing they're better suited for. Some are politicians, some are teachers, some go into the scientific fields, others go into different industries. She said 40% of her coven there in San Diego were active members of the military. And I'll go into some more of that in a minute too. But she was adamant that there was foundational programming and training in place that all children in the SRA families went through, and this was one of them: weapons training, martial arts training, things of that nature. So while they've made our children so weak and powerless that they need a safe space if somebody even says a word like Trump, they need a puppy and a coloring book, and that is triggered, and it's a microaggression, and what am I going to do? And it's so offended. And, they've got our children so confused. They literally cannot even tell if they're a boy or a girl. There's a plan here. They are weakening us to the point that they believe there's absolutely no way we could withstand them at all. There's absolutely no way that this younger generation of humans could do something like we see in Red Dawn, organize and strategically think and do without food and do without water and go, hide and have all of this. No, they want our children over in the corner sucking their thumb, rocking in the fetal position, wondering why Google isn't banning these guys. Don't they know that I don't like this? And why is Twitter allowing this? That's what they want our kids to be doing. And that's what a large majority of our kids are doing. So we're here. So let's get into it. But as we talk about what the cabal is trying to do, don't fall into fear or doom or anything. I want to point out as we start to delve into this Black Awakening that they are no competition. This has been written. This has been prophesied. We know what's happening. We know who we are. If you are truly woke, if you are truly in the body of Christ, then the Bible says the same Spirit who raised Jesus Christ from the dead dwells in us. Wrap your mind around that. The same Spirit who rose Jesus Christ from the dead, lives in us. That's who we are. So if the Lord has woken you up to stand with Jesus Christ and to preach this good news, to preach this gospel to the end of the world, if God has called you to do that and he has woken you up in this era of world history, this amazing time to be alive, then you got to know that the same Spirit that raised Jesus Christ from the dead lives in us. That's who we are. I couldn't care less about their abracadabra or their magic wands or any of their silly enchantments, their dark magic, their dark arts. Ooh, you know, the only thing that makes it so mysterious is that they've hidden it from us. That's what a cult means. It just means hidden. But one thing isn't hidden: the fact that these very same beings who have lifted themselves up as so powerful, ruling over us, were cast out of heaven with the flick of a finger. Jesus Christ said, recorded in Luke 10:18, he replied, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." These same entities didn't have any power over Jesus Christ in the higher dimensions from whence they fell, were cast out, and they certainly don't have any power over Jesus Christ in this dimension, or any other for that matter. So we can move forward without fear. We can move forward in victory, but we do need to move forward. We are the counterculture to their Black Awakening. We are the Great Awakening. We are the body of Christ. And this is his story, and this is our story because he allowed us to be a part of it. How awesome is that? That he would give his glory and honor to us. Absolutely amazing. There's no one like him. All right, let's hit it. These are just a few highlights of the Russ Dizdar interview. I'll put the full links below because the 3 or 4 witnesses that I'm going to play for you, the total length of their interviews is probably 5, 6, 7 hours. So this one is a 1-hour interview, but I will put the links to each and every one of these down in the description box if you guys want to go and listen to the entire interview, which of course I highly recommend. So let's kick it off with our brother Russ Dizdar as he gives us a short introduction.
Here's what I can say coming from the underground, that it is far more organized. It is astoundingly supernaturally powerful. The world has no idea what's coming. The intelligence agencies can't touch this. They just cannot grasp it. They have no threat analysis for this, none, let alone being assimilated when it all comes down, because it's hell's shock and awe that is coming. There's no new world order. We all know the concept of chaos before new order, but that's by design. That's by decades of development. There's no ability for the Antichrist to come out unless he has millions of these super soldiers that'll be here, and that's part of the missing part of prophecy over the years. You hear a lot about the Antichrist, maybe a little bit about the false prophet, but there is none of this without a vast multi-continental, supernaturally augmented level, and I believe at the very least the approaching of hybrid or at least augmented humanity. These soldiers will be beyond anything humanity's ever seen, and we've engaged some along the way, and our reports of it now, I estimate on 4 generations of these since the 50s worldwide, we're probably about 100 million. The embedding globally of demonic presence, Revelation 12, Revelation 13, is going to be so deeply entrenched, and the interface between the dark side and witting humans is going to be so broad and deep, they will be ready for the day that it all begins. And we're just seeing the rumblings. We're seeing the Odin. We're seeing the times of sorrow, and that's bad enough. All of a sudden, white horse, red horse, black horse, pale green horse prophecies, those pictorial, God gave prophetic content in a picture, bursting out into the scene. So what's predicted is already embedded, and it's near the breaking point. No, I believe that it's been that kind of so-called colonization began with the Nazis back in the late 30s with Lebensborn, and Himmler wanted his goal, spiritually given to him from the dark side, was to create 200 million master race. That's what they called them, super soldiers. They called them godmen, like hybrids. Whether we want to believe this, they believed in the occult version of the Aryan, that they could backbreed, spiritually driven and guided, and genetically too, they could backbreed and recreate the hybrid or the godmen Aryan. Everybody knows that in history. Here's what, again, Revelation 13 shows. When the Antichrist is unleashed, he's inseparably connected to the 10 kings. That means a global, political, military, it's political, it's military, it's economic, and I believe technological. So I believe, without question, and we've tracked this principle, they have, for just the United States alone, I could talk about Europe, it's worse. In Europe, it's worse. But here in the United States, in every single city, embedded super soldiers, programmed sleepers. They're in every single city. They're in every single state. They have been placed since the 70s. They've even been placed by design in churches. They're definitely in government, law enforcement, federal, military. That's by design. So I'm saying,
okay, I'd like to break in for just a second and point out how he had mentioned that he believes there are at least 100 million of these super soldiers, programmed and ready, boots on the ground. Then he went on to say that that's what Himmler was working on in the Third Reich, that his vision was for this 200 million, an army of 200 million superhumans, super soldiers. Now, the reason why I want to break in and point out the importance of that is the Bible prophecy. This is Revelation 13 through 19, and it's speaking about the ambush. It says, the sixth angel sounded his trumpet, and I heard a voice coming from the four horns of the golden altar that is before God. It said to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates, and the four angels who had been kept ready for this very hour, this day, month, and year, were released to kill 1/3 of mankind. The number of troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000. And he says, I heard the number. He actually put that in the Bible. I heard the number. So he wanted to make the point. He wasn't just saying there was a bunch of them. No, twice 10,000 times 10,000. That's 200 million. That's precisely what the Nazi program was designed to do. Create 200 demigods, superhuman super soldiers, hybrids. And I wanted to bring this up specifically because Bible scholars and prophecy experts for decades and decades, probably longer than that, have been teaching that that prophecy is about the army of China, because China has such a huge population that they just assumed that, well, who else could field that many men, a 200 million man standing army? I mean, the entire United States is only like 300 million people, so it has to be China, right? And I disagree. I believe it's this, what we're talking about here today, the Black Awakening, these super soldiers, the continuation of this Lebensborn, God-man, the return of the Nephilim is what it is. And I don't come to that conclusion haphazardly. I believed that. I think I actually wrote that in my first book. I believed that. And please don't go back to the Bible scholars and the prophecy scholars that came before us and, oh, they're all false prophets. Now we've got to stop that. I love and respect our brothers and sisters who came before us in every generation. So just because people like Erwin Baxter or Gary Stearman, Jack and Rexella Van Impe, or Hal Lindsey, the ones who came before us, just because they think it's the army of China, I don't disrespect them. In fact, I have a tremendous amount of respect for them, just like I would my own parents. When I was still on milk as a baby Christian, they were the ones who fed me. So I would never, ever say that they're false prophets or anything because we disagree on this point. Quite the opposite. I'm forever indebted to them because they allowed me to climb up and stand on their shoulders, because their ceiling became my floor. So the generations who came before us, we need to esteem them and respect them and stop all of this venomous backbiting just because we disagree on a few points. God builds precept upon precept. And sometimes he doesn't put the new wine in the old wineskins. Sometimes these people do come along and circle back around and get back up on top on different ideas and stuff. But even if they never do, even if we never do agree on this, I'm going to move forward with the new wine, and I'm going to be forever grateful to my predecessors who came before me and taught me everything that they know, and kindled a fire in me to follow Jesus Christ. And honestly, it would be my greatest honor if my ceiling could be your floor. If you guys could take the things that I talk about here and you could build on them, and you could continue to grow and reach heights that I could never even dream of. So all that being said, yes, I believe that this 200 million man standing army of Antichrist is this sleeper cell, super soldier, MK Ultra type program. So please don't take this the wrong way if you disagree with me or agree with me. But if you do agree with me that this is the 200 million man standing army, this is the army of Antichrist that we're talking about here, the rise of the satanic super soldier, don't disregard everything that all of those other prophecy teachers teach, because I agree with them, like I do most of my brothers and sisters. I agree with them about 99% of what we all talk about. It's the same way you guys agree with me, on some stuff, and some stuff you don't. And that's fine, because none of us are all knowing. We're all just one part of the body. And if you disagree with me, just reason with me for a second here. Think about the magnitude of what that Bible verse said. It said 1/3 of mankind. So let's just do ballparks. Let's just do 7 billion people in the world. So the Bible prophecy says they'll be able to take out 1/3. So we're talking about an event that takes out 2.34 billion people. Billion. So let's assume they took out every man, woman, and child in the United States of America. It's empty. They empty America. $300 million. So they still will have to take out 2 billion humans when all hell breaks loose on earth. That's what the Bible prophecy says. Now that doesn't sound like China's army. And I know we believe about the Russia and China invasion. I absolutely believe it. Not only have some of the great respect, Henry Gruber and some of the David Wilkerson, some very respected fathers in the faith seen it also, but I've seen it. God has shown it to me. So both of those. But that's not going to take out, if they both invade America, the United States of America, like I just said, I just erased the entire United States of America. They would still have to take out another 2 billion people. So let's be logical here. This is not a regional war. This isn't, this nation against that nation against this nation. That's not the way this reads. I don't think there's any way that verse is just talking about an army of Chinese soldiers. I think it's talking about an army of this kind of soldier. This kind. These types of soldiers. And I know they have told us these are all just random, unrelated incidents and individual lone shooters and all sorts of stories. But you guys know it. You know it in your heart. You know it and I know it. That all of these people were trained and worked for the same people. Like start with Stephen Paddock. He was said to be in the fetal position, crying and losing his mind prior to the incident. And I'm getting ready to play you some firsthand testimony of what these Manchurian candidates and MK Ultra trauma people go through. And in my opinion, it's beyond clear that Stephen Paddock came from one of these families and worked for these agencies. His brother was arrested for pedophilia, or for child pornography. This is always what we see in these families. Sirhan, in the Robert Kennedy assassination, he says, I don't remember any of it, that he blacked out. Remember the woman in the polka dot dress and all of that sort of thing? And yeah, then he blacked out. It's no coincidence that the famous Darren Brown hypnotist, have you guys seen the assassin shooting Stephen Fry episode where he supposedly hypnotizes this young guy here? And he's just carrying a closed briefcase and sits down in the rows of this theater. And then a woman walks in a polka dot dress with a polka dot bow in her hair and sits down in front of him. And that was the trigger. Then he went into his hypnotic state and he opened the case and he pulled out a gun and he shot Stephen Fry. Of course, it was fake. You know, this was a setup. I mean, not that the hypnotism was fake. It could have been, I don't know. But it's certainly no coincidence. I mean, Darren Brown, with millions and millions and millions of views, shows this experiment about hypnotism, and the trigger is this woman entering the room in the polka dot dress, and that precisely matches details about the Bobby Kennedy assassination that nobody could really make sense of, and who was the woman in the polka dot dress and all of that. And the notebooks found in his room, he was just writing over and over and over and over. I mean, he's obviously one of these sleepers. There's no doubt that every single anomaly in that case points to what there aren't any mysteries in the case. This is exactly what would happen with an MK Ultra sort of Manchurian candidate. The same way with James Holmes. Here's just this regular guy that right up till before the incident, before the trigger word, he was considered a regular person. But he somehow had all of this incredible technical knowledge that even our military, I was in the military, I know there's tons of guys who don't know crap about guns really, other than the M16 or whatever they're trained with on the range once a year. But this guy, yeah, he had an incredible sophisticated knowledge of weapons and tripwires and booby traps and all of that. And these people tend to disappear also after their trials. He was transferred to an undisclosed prison, you know, to protect him from the threats. So nobody really knows where he is because they don't do the time. He's back in the program. And that alter personality that came to the front for all of this trial and everything, he may have just been the patsy, like Oswald. Because in all of these cases, whether it's Adam Lanza or James Holmes, we know the eyewitnesses say there are multiple shooters in every single instance. Even Las Vegas. There are multiple shooters with Adam Lanza. There are multiple shooters with James Holmes in the theater. Eyewitnesses, they know what they saw. They've just convinced us, oh, it doesn't matter what you see with your own eyeballs. The official narrative, that's what you believe. But all of us know. We know. They won't let us talk about it. They might even take this video down. But we know that there's more people involved, and we know that these aren't isolated instances. They're just one mentally ill person over here and one mentally ill person over there. No, these are all beta tests and operations to bring about certain legislations, and it's social engineering.
Not only is Adam Lanza's, or was Adam Lanza's father, connected to the LIBOR ring, but so was James Holmes' father. He was a very high-level, highly paid executive of FICO, the credit rating agencies. Both of their fathers, it appears, are a part of a high-level cover-up within the LIBOR ring in regards to the LIBOR scandal itself, which was rigging international interest rates during the 2008 financial collapse. In fact, I believe there's a few people that have actually already gone to jail over this.
And again, nested operations, several things going on at once. Of course, we know the school shootings are always used to advance the gun grab, to disarm Americans before this happens. The next thing was to demonize preppers. Remember the narrative that it was the mother's fault that Adam Lanza did this? Did paranoid, gun-crazed mother trigger son's school killing spree? Friends say she believed the world was on the edge of collapse. Oh, it's her fault because she had guns in the house and she thought it was the end of the world and all of this stuff. She was a prepper. And if you think I'm making too much out of that, then you just are not paying attention. This is a video that I did back during the Zuckerberg congressional hearings. And it focused on the hearings and also the DHS documents that came out during the Obama administration, where Facebook was literally saying it was a hate crime and, oh, we can't allow terrorism and things of that nature when just talking about conservative free speech. And then I cited the documents, which I'll show you right here. The thumbnail cracks me up. Sometimes they are out to get you. And I'm not going to go back and redo that whole video right here and now. You can go watch that video if you want to see the actual documents. And I think there's a link below in it to the actual documents that Janet Napolitano had sent out to all of the police forces, identifying who the potential terrorists are. And you can see that Section U was hearkening back to the Timothy McVeigh incident, saying that right-wing extremists are who we should be worried about. Prominent among these themes were the militia movement's opposition to gun control efforts, right? So you are a right-wing extremist, a potential terrorist threat, if you express opposition to gun control efforts. Wait for it, gets way worse. And exploit social issues such as abortion, interracial crimes, and same-sex marriage. So already you can see most of us are on the list, but it gets worse. Right-wing extremist paranoia of foreign regimes could escalate or be magnified in the event of an economic crisis or military confrontation, hearkening back to the New World Order conspiracy theories of the 1990s. Okay, and keep going. That led some right-wing extremists to believe that a new world order would bring about a world government that would usurp the sovereignty of the United States and its Constitution, thereby infringing upon their liberty. Domestic right-wing extremists have feared, predicted, and anticipated a cataclysmic economic collapse in the United States. Conspiracy theories involving declarations of martial law, anti-government conspiracy theories, and end times prophecies could motivate extremist individuals or groups to stockpile food, ammunition, weapons, blah, blah, blah. So groups in past such as violent Christian identity organizations and extremist members of the militia movement. So this is the actual government document that the Obama administration released to the United States police departments, letting them know who the potential terrorists are. So if you think I'm making too much out of them using Adam Lanza's mom in this way to further this, to build this into the mindset of the American people that we are paranoid, right-wing extremists, potential terrorists, then you've missed it because it's already in their minds. I just went to court. I showed you guys the court papers. I was dragged into court trying to take custody of my son with an emergency order because of this YouTube channel. So nobody can tell me I'm making too much of it. I know for a fact that the people in this country are brainwashed to think that Christians or anybody who talks about the things we talk about are crazy paranoid maniacs. And how did that happen? It happened through all of these operations, all of these psyops that we're talking about right now. And here's another one that a lot of us might have missed, but now that we know about the trans agenda and hindsight being 2020, we can see that they've been doing this all along. But yeah, this is from CBS. They obtained Adam Lanza's college records, and look what they say.
Connecticut State University. When asked his gender, he wrote, "I choose not to answer."
So they go on laying the foundation here, saying that, that's why he had these mental issues, because he was bullied, because he had gender identity issues. And his student records from 2008, his college records prove it, because under gender, he wrote, "I choose not to answer." But this isn't just about Adam Lanza. This is about all of them. It's more and more and more. When I came up, when I went through school, there was no such thing as a school shooting. It had never happened. Never. It never, it just didn't happen. So no, we didn't worry about that. We didn't have the doors on lockdown and everything like they have now. We all got to have cards and codes and push buttons to get through to get our kids in and out of the school. No, we didn't have any of that because this is something they created. And it was one, first it was one, and then it was two, and then it was, now what's it been in the last 12 months? How many of these mass shootings have we had just in the last 12 months now? It's ramping up and we haven't seen nothing yet. But could you imagine when we're talking about all hell breaking loose? Can you even imagine if 200 million of these super soldiers, if all of these events happened on the same day, what would I mean, we just had 3. They just did their little beta test with 3 on 9/11. They hit the Pentagon at the same time that they hit New York. And I guess the third one they say was what, going to the Capitol and didn't make it. But surely you can see where their mind is. They're not just trying to get a movie theater. They're going to hit several places simultaneously. Can you imagine if the day that the towers got hit, that very same instant, the Sandy Hook school got hit, and the Batman movie theater got hit, and the shopping malls got hit, and these guys walked into the churches at the very same time? All the churches getting hit, the movie theaters getting hit, the shopping malls getting hit, New York getting hit, the Capitol getting hit, all simultaneously. The Vegas shooting, people are at casinos, concerts, and they unleash it all at once. Yeah, I think we can all pretty much imagine that the economy isn't going to survive that. George Bush going on the mic and saying, hey, everybody keep shopping. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. And that's the domino effect. And then the martial law, people are going to be panicked, and the grocery stores are going to be wiped out in a matter of minutes. And the gas, remember after 9/11, heaven forbid you didn't have a full tank of gas when that happened. I remember sitting, I think 3 or 4 hours, because back then I was really poor and I kept like $5 worth of gas in my car all the time. And I literally could not make it to my minimum wage job unless I got some gas in my car. And everybody else was in the same boat because they've got Americans living payday to payday. And we tend to believe everybody's prepared like us. We're mentally and emotionally prepared for this. But there are going to be people who are completely oblivious. Remember after the Boston bombing, there was essentially martial law. The tanks rolled in and the black super soldier looking SWAT team guys, and they weren't the hybrids, they were just the cops. But they just went in, no search warrants. They didn't go before a judge and get a search warrant and say, oh, John Smith's house, we have reason to believe that he's harboring terrorists, and here's our evidence, and we need a search warrant to go search his house. No, they just walked in like the SS and just started terrorizing people, innocent citizens that were just watching TV and weren't even aware of what was going on downtown. And nobody cared. Not only did they not care, but they celebrated. They acted like their sports team just won the playoffs, while super soldier looking cops are breaking the law and just barging into people's homes.
What the hell? That's what we woke up to this morning.
I'm not gonna stop filming. This is intense. Dude in turret with gun. I'm filming. I'm not gonna stop filming.
But you guys have seen all of those clips where they drag people out and make them put their hands in the air and put their hands behind their back and twisting around elderly Americans and stuff who had absolutely nothing to do with this. No search warrants, no reason to even assume that they did have something to do with it. They were supposed to be there to protect the people, but instead they started treating the Americans like they were somehow all enemies. You're guilty until proven innocent, instead of innocent until proven guilty. Just no rule of law at all. They don't have to obey any laws. And I wanted to point out this picture too, because this is exactly what it looked like in my vision about a decade ago that God gave me. This was sort of the neighborhood I wasn't living in Boston or anything, but the houses were like this. I lived on a street like this where they were much smaller, sort of old historic houses. And this is exactly what it looked like. They were coming around to the doors 2 by 2. 2 officers came to our door, Caucasian men. There were trucks like this, like every block or every 2 blocks, up and down the entire neighborhoods. So when I saw this happen, it was just like, whoa. And as far as beta tests go, you can see they've tested it and people are okay with it. People aren't even talking about it anymore. They don't care. And after the beta test was over, everybody cheered. Nobody even thought, hey, how did this turn into martial law in a matter of seconds? And we lost all of our rights and there's no need to get search warrants and you can do whatever you want. But nobody was concerned at all. I mean, we were, but the crowds, the citizens, they were cheering. They were like, hell yeah. So as far as the social engineering goes for getting the citizenry, the sheeple ready for this event to put us under martial law, yeah, these people think that this is a good thing. They're like, thanks, that was awesome. And that's a clip of just something really small. They just weren't like cheering the fact that there were turret guns pointing at all of their homes in a matter of minutes. You guys have seen some of the more absurd ones where, yeah, people are like climbing the pole lights and ripping their shirts off, like the cabal just won the playoffs. It's just unbelievable. And we saw the same sort of mindless obedience after Hurricane Katrina, when they completely overthrew the Constitution and started seizing people's weapons. Nobody voted on it. Nobody said, let's overturn the amendment. Nobody, anything, just a mayor, it wasn't even Congress. It wasn't even the President of the United States to come and say, hey, we've decided to seize everybody's guns. No, it was just like a local mayor. He's like, yeah, go ahead, go take their guns. These people who were in the trial of their life, defending their food, people looting them, looting houses and killing people and stuff. And the mayor says, now's a good time to disarm everybody. Since there's no stores, there's nowhere for them to go to get supplies or anything. And we want to make sure that they can't defend themselves against all of this looting. And again, all you got to do is a quick search. You can go and look tons of people. Here they are again, these super soldier types, ready to bust down doors, right? For innocent citizens. These aren't terrorists. These are victims of a hurricane. They should be bringing them pallets of food and water, but instead, this is what we saw. These people with blind obedience following orders. And again, I don't think every single military guy is MK Ultra or anything like that. I don't think so at all. But this blind obedience, this social engineering that they've placed these operatives in strategic locations. They might be a mayor, they might be a general, they might be a corporal, they might around. And yeah, all it takes, they've done the beta tests. These were the beta tests. We lived through it. And they did it. I mean, look at this little old woman. Really? Really? Not only did she just basically lose everything and the power's out and it's the middle of this horrible storm, she survived one of the biggest hurricanes to hit the United States, and now this? She probably thought they were coming to help. And look, they're dragging her out like some sort of dirty criminal. And everybody's just gone on with their life. We don't even really talk about it anymore. So they've done their beta tests. They know exactly how far along they are in the social engineering program. And you know how far along they are? They're done. They're ready. It's ready. And during Hurricane Katrina, they used the United States military against the United States people, which is completely against posse comitatus. But after the Boston Marathon, they used, what was it, SWAT and FBI, because I mean, we know the FBI isn't corrupt. No, not at all. But anyway, up to this point, we've kind of been talking about examples of just people, corrupt people, blind leaders of the blind, and just regular SRA, MK Ultra programmed multiples. But there's even more going on than that. I don't know how many of you remember this from a few years back, but it went a little bit viral. At first, nobody even noticed, which was very strange. This footage here that I'm going to show, it's actually now gone. The guy's whole channel is gone. But he was taking the cell phone footage trying to say, oh, look, the military's poking around and look at this fire here in the car. They started this fire and all of this. He wasn't talking about this Nephilim super soldier question over here, which you can see this guy right here, the height of this guy. This is the height of the other guys. He's at least 8 foot tall, maybe more. Eyewitnesses said, one guy said that he was 6'4", and this guy had to be a couple of feet taller than him. He was a monster. And people say, oh, well, he was standing way closer up than everybody else. But you can see, that's why I zoomed in on this part. You can see this is the edge of the sidewalk here, and he's standing exactly at the same place as this guy. This guy's foot is actually closer to the sidewalk than this guy standing down off the ledge, like 6 inches lower than this soldier is. Or woman. I don't know if that's a man or a woman. I'll play just a second of it so you can see it in motion. I don't want to play too much of it since that guy's channel was taken down. But I do want to show you in motion because there's other people over here on the other side as well, and they also hit him just above the waist or chest high. But again, it does make you wonder, is this a beta test? Why would they place this one like 9 foot tall guy right in the middle of this scene? Although it wasn't on the news or anything, and nobody, like I said, even the person taking this wasn't paying attention to that. It was just caught in the frame. But I did want you to make a note of it because here in a second I am going to play you a couple minutes of multiple people's dreams and visions about this end time super soldier army. And you'll begin to hear people talk about these security guards that started showing up at the malls and stuff that were 8 and 9 feet tall. And they had the Nephilim traits, like we talked about, were recorded in the Bible, 6 fingers and red hair, just exactly like the red-haired giants that were unearthed in so many of the caverns and catacombs. And then they're reporting that that's what they saw. So I thought this was interesting because this already happened a couple of years ago. And of course, this is the scene afterwards. You guys probably remember the whole thing burned down. I just wanted to make a note of this before we move on. The connection between this mystery fire and the presence of this possible Nephilim or giant super soldier type guy. Because later in this video, I'm going to talk about the California wildfires and a lot of other mysterious fires. Fires with daycares burning down, the Presidio, and some other things. So I just wanted to ask you to make a mental note of that for later. So also we need to recognize that there's more than one thing going on. Again, with the reductionist thinking, just because one thing is going on doesn't mean that something else isn't going on simultaneously. They always have nested, like Russian nested dolls, they always have nested programs. So just because there are programs that are genetically engineering these super soldiers, these hybrid super soldiers, there are also still regular MK Ultra programs where they're splitting the personality and doing programmed multiples and training regular humans in these SRA families. So both of those things are going on simultaneously. And make no mistake, God has been warning his servants for a long time if people will just listen to them. There's limitless number like this of dreams and visions on the internet for the servants of the Lord Jesus Christ saying, I received a warning. I saw these souls. It's always the same thing. All these people different cultures, different races, different languages. They don't know each other, all different age groups, and yet they're all reporting that the Lord showed them the same thing. The only thing they do have in common is that they are all servants of the Lord Jesus Christ. And they say this is what they see, these super soldiers that are dressed all in black, almost like SWAT gear. This is our powerful brother and sister, Henry and Monique. From here on, I'm just going to put the screenshot where you can see what the channel is and you can see the name of the video. And then I'm just going to play them straight through. And I'm just going to take like a minute clip out of each because this is getting really long. But then I will put all the links below in the description box if you guys want to go check out all the channels and listen to their full testimony.
Dream.
Okay, in the dream, I was in the mall, and I remember it was a big, huge mall. I remember looking up, and I remember seeing full of windows, glass, or just full of glass, and then it had like slits of windows through this glass. It was, and I remember seeing two guys up in the ceiling where all these windows or glass was at, and the man was dressed in full black, and they was getting prepared to swing down from a rope, and they was getting prepared to kill people in the mall. And this wasn't the only place. In my spirit, in the dream, there were other places that they were planning to attack, as well as more men, but the only men that I seen were two.
About the government's involvement with the Nephilim / alien / devil invasion that the Lord showed me. The Lord showed me a vision of those cops that was in my dream that was passing out. I get the sense from what the Lord is showing me in the vision that he's telling me that they're Nephilim, even though they wasn't giants. So, but their DNA is definitely compromised. I want to put this video on the screen that I had this dream, well, not a dream, it was actually two different visions where the Lord showed me more into them, into this invasion of these troops and stuff. So what I saw was a room about the size of an elevator, and there were people dressed in all black, what you would imagine would be martial law people. It wasn't revealed to me if they were martial law, but they was definitely dressed in all black, and they looked like what you envision in martial law. And they were packed in this room like sardines in a can. They were squished all up into each other. There was no room. There was even people on the top. Like they was all squished in. And I knew instantly that they hated Christians. They hated Christians. And they just wanted to really bust out of this room and just get at the Christians. They really, really hated Christians and felt that Christians are everything wrong with the world. I would say that the age was between, I would say no older than mid-30s. They were not old men. They looked like young men in their 20s and early 30s. They were all types of nationalities. I can tell you that. They were not all white. I knew also that they had some special abilities. They were enhanced with something. They were not like normal men. They had, I don't know if it was drugs. I just knew instantly that they was on something that made them special in ways that were beyond human. I also knew that every single one of them knew that they was working with ISIS. It wasn't a few of them, which I'll get to in my next experience, will be the case in that one. But in this one, every single one of them knew, but not all of them were actually going to the ISIS members and doing stuff with them or interacting with them in any way. But they all knew that they was working with ISIS. So what I saw was some of them knew they was working with ISIS, and they would go to the ISIS training camps or wherever they was training in, and they would interact with them. ISIS was being trained separate from them. They were not trained together at all, but they were definitely working with each other. They had abilities like that. And then they also had special weapons. So That was what I experienced, and they could read minds. And it was made known to me. This was not in the future. It was made known to me that this was right now.
So I was dreaming last night that I was in Canada, and I saw Alex Jones standing right in front of me, and he was talking to a political activist. Now, I was in a busy commercial, like a tourist, a place to hang out and walk around, nice fancy buildings, and I saw a bobtail right behind him with the sliding door open, and out of nowhere I saw like men dressed like SWAT teams, but their SWAT teams were not all blacked out. They were like a gray, like armor vest, but the armor vests were black. The helmet, of course, was all black. Their face again was covered, and they immediately grabbed Alex Jones. They threw him in back of the bobtail, and with fully automatic rifles or machine guns, they just started opening fire on Alex Jones, and they executed him inside the bobtail. And that's when I see all the people screaming, shouting, and running in different directions. I'm like, what is going on here?
So I'm gonna go back a ways. I think it was March of '09. I had this dream of myself and a co-worker. We were standing what looked like an overhang at a school where people walk out of the classroom, and then you got this long concrete walkway, and you got a covering on top where people, where it won't rain. Well, him and I were standing there, and out the door came these soldiers, all with M4s, M7s, M16s and whatnot. They had black khaki pants on with boots, just like the military wears, but they're black, almost like SWAT. But they had these t-shirts on with an emblem over here on the left side, a small emblem. And that emblem happened to be like a white circle that went around it, and it had a blue cross in the center with an X in the middle. Okay? Now, following that dream, I was given two words: H-A-G-O. Okay? A lot of these Spanish speakers out there think Hago, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Alright? I'm talking about H, period, A, period. It stands for something, right? And then after that, I had a dream about, the dream changed. It went to the word axis, A-X-I-S, axis. And when it was looked up, my roommate, she looked it up, and as it turns out, Hago means dark man with many masks. Okay? Many masks. Axis, as you know from World War II, axis of evil or whatnot, but axis, in my dream, the word itself stands for uniting nations, 10 or more nations together for a common goal.
Okay, this last one I'm going to read because it's just one of those videos that's typed on the screen, set to music. So I know a lot of you say that you listen while you're at work and things like that. So I'm just going to narrate. I'm just going to read it off their screen instead of playing this video. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to jump to the important parts real quick here. I dreamed I was at the mall alone. I was only running in to get something really fast. I suddenly sensed something wasn't right. Something was telling me to leave fast. Then I saw an exit. It was guarded by security officers. Then automatic doors started closing. I ran to get through. I got through one set of doors, but there was another set. I was trapped in the atrium. A few other people were trapped too. Two guys started shooting at us. Their guns shot small missiles, like grenade launchers. I've heard that in lots of other mall attack visions. I hid behind a pillar for a second. The guy came running up behind the pillar and yelled at me, "Run!" We ran and were narrowly missed a few times. Somehow I got outside. There were people trapped out here too. It was very cold. There was black slushy snow on the ground. And then he talks about coming up to people outside and telling them about Jesus. And then he says, I walked toward the exit of the parking lot to a place where guards were gathered together. They were under something like an awning over some tables and benches. I went in there. I started to talk to one of the guards, trying to talk him into letting me out. The other guards were mocking me. There were some guards who were giants, like 13 feet tall. Two women I saw were at least 9 feet tall. Something was weird about their teeth. I was looking right up into their mouths when she was talking to another. She had red hair in a ponytail. They wanted to kill me, but the little guy told me to go back in with the other people. So that's pretty much the crux of it. But that's the one I had mentioned earlier, where he said he saw these security guard types, like we just saw, with the one really tall one and then the other regular sized ones. And I've heard tons of other dreams and visions from the servants of the Lord over the years that I didn't take the time to look up for this video, but they're out there, where people had strange visions of the same types of thing, these red-haired giants. I remember one gal, she said hers was in a mall also, and the experience was she had left the food court and went into the restroom, and there were like 9-foot tall, red-haired women with 6 fingers in the restroom, and she felt like something was about to happen, and that they were incestuous, something about their family, and they were incestuous, and it didn't make sense to her. She was sharing it and said, does anybody have any advice? What could this possibly mean? And I think that's what it means. It's the same type of event that we're talking about right here, and it's this genetic engineering. It's the return of the Nephilim. And I know many of you have seen L.A. Marzulli's documentary about the Afghanistan giant, where our military encountered a remnant of these cave-dwelling, red-haired, 6-fingered giants in the caves of Afghanistan when they were looking for terrorist cells over there, and a battle ensued and all of that. I had clips of it on my channel, but L.A. Marzulli tried to take down my channel, so he gave me a copyright strike and everything. And I talked to him personally. I said, please, I'll take it down willingly. You don't have to. This is my life's work. I have 11 years of work on here, but he wouldn't budge a bit. And it's sad, because I believe if God gives you something to share, that there are people who can't afford to pay you for it. So I wish that he would put that up for free. But it's out there and you can buy it, and it is a really good documentary about the incident with the actual interviews with the soldiers who were involved in stuff. But Steve Quayle also has a book about it. L.A. Marzulli didn't corner the market on these testimonies. Lots of writers have interviewed these people. I think even Coast to Coast did an episode on it. Steve Quayle's book is called Long Walkers, Return of the Nephilim. And you can see here the cover. He had an artist actually do a sort of rendition of the incident, where they had loaded the corpse of the giant onto a pallet to ship it off. And of all places, guess where they took the giant? To a base, to an air base in Germany. Yep, not to those conspiracy theory air bases in the United States. Nope, they shipped this, although these were U.S. soldiers, they loaded the corpse and they shipped it to an air base in Germany. But note the physical description, that it had red hair, it had 6 fingers and 6 toes, and it had double rows of teeth, which is what we found in a lot of these mummies in the archaeological record as well, that we've recovered from catacombs and caves and different things. So I thought that was worth mentioning in light of the prophetic vision we just discussed, because he mentioned he could see up into their mouths while they were talking, and there was something weird about their teeth. So that's probably it. And as always, all of that backs up what's recorded in the Holy Bible about these giants from the antediluvian world and in the Old Testament, who had 24 fingers and toes, 6 on each hand and 6 on each foot. So all of this matches up perfectly with the Holy Scriptures. But keep that in mind about the 6 fingers and 6 toes, because in a little bit I'm going to talk about Val, the stranger at the Pentagon, who claimed to be from these quote-unquote alien races, and he had 6 fingers. And also the alien autopsy with the gray alien. Whether you believe it or not, if you watch the film, that creature also had the 6 fingers. So whatever genome they're using in these petri dishes, this is a trait that you'll see pop up again and again. Also, don't forget the controversy that surrounded the official portrait of Barack Obama. You can just do a quick search here and you can find tons of articles and videos on that if you haven't heard about it. But the basics of the controversy are that a lot of people thought that the artist painted Barack Obama with a hidden 6th finger for some reason. And like I mentioned in the first video of this series, that it's not super rare for humans to be born with 6 fingers, that because of the contamination of the human gene pool I had mentioned, it's called polydactyl now, that we still see that trait pop up in the bloodlines of humanity. But as far as I know, from the images I see broadcast, I've never met him in person, but He doesn't have a visible sixth finger, so take it for what it's worth. Okay, I want to move on from the dreams and visions. I just want to point to two last videos that I posted that I really recommend you watch if you haven't. This one was the holiday one that I put up right before Black Friday. So a lot of people might not go back and watch it because it says an event around the holidays or something, but this is not a holiday video. This is about the ambush. This talks about just that, this attack on the mall. So there's several more of these included in this 126-minute video. So please don't skip that thinking, oh, the holidays are over, so I'm moving on. No, because this is about the ambush, and I think it's really important. And the last one that I think is a must-see, I even put it in the title, must-see, Prophetic Dream, the Beginning of the Tribulation Vision. This one is shocking. I've even had people kind of get on to me for posting it and saying, oh, well, why'd you tell them that? Now they know how to do it. Like I'm giving that, honey, they don't need my advice on how to do it, but this is what God has revealed. This is how they take over the military bases, how the ambush happens. And it's a series actually of visions that this guy had. He gave his testimony on True News. He sounds like Mark Taylor. I've had a lot of people ask, is that Mark Taylor? And it's not at all. I think his name was Tony, but he does. His voice sounds just like Mark Taylor, but it's not. Anyway, that's a 15-minute video. And if you have not seen that, you just must. It's a must see. It's terrifying, especially in light of what we're talking about. If the masses aren't going to wake up and prepare, at least we can. God has given us foresight. So please don't waste it. Please don't neglect it. Please take the time to listen to our brothers and sisters whom he's trusted with these glimpses. So the point is, that's just another confirmation. God has been individually warning his people for decades that these super soldiers exist, that there is some sort of hidden program going on with SWAT team looking super soldiers who are genetically engineered and all of that type of thing. And further, it's no coincidence with the predictive programming that they've shown us all this thing about the clone wars. Clone wars, clone wars, clone wars. Showing us right to our face about genetically engineering armies and armies of clones for war. Okay, I want to jump back to this interview with Russ Dizdar, and then I'm going to buzz through the last ones, through Smalley and through Mary Lou Lake, through the child abductee Johnny Gosh's, his mother's testimony, and a little bit from David Wilcock, and then we're going to wrap it up. This clip right here of Russ, I think, is important because he talks about the introduction of multiple personality disorder and DID, that, yes, of course, there's always been mental illness and there's always been demon possession throughout all eras of world history. But there is, in the medical community, there was an unprecedented flood after World War II of these multiple personality disorder patients into the psych wards worldwide. So this is clearly evidence of this experimentation. And the medical community didn't even know how to deal with it. They had to make up the terminology and all of that sort of thing to explain what it was that they were seeing all of a sudden. So here's Russ telling us about it.
Breeding program that Himmler was kind of in charge of and led the way on. Well, they believe that they can create, and we've all heard this, godmen or super, soldiers, but they call it the master race. So their version of this back then in the late 30s was to find Germans who had what they called the Aryan blood. They believed, and for us it would be the Nephilim blood. I mean, this is what they believed, whether we believe it or not. They believed they were being guided to backbreed so that they can reproduce what they called godmen. And that's history. That's what they attempted. What we didn't know was the details of that. And of course, after the war in the mid-40s, then, that was kind of, we thought it was off the table. Well, what occurred was when Himmler began to do this, his goal was to have 200 million super soldiers for the future. so that when they conquered the world, they have a 1,000-year reign. They would rule and reign with these soldiers. They would be stronger, faster, and again, their version, God-men, small g. So when the war was over, the rat lions took the Nazis, the SS, the scientists all over the world. And 20 years, 25 years later, all of a sudden, we have these individuals showing up at psych wards and counseling centers. At first, they're diagnosed as schizophrenic, but then they realize, no, these are not. The American Psychological Association, and worldwide, by the way, they had to decide, hey, who are these people? Because they're showing up by the hundreds in the 70s, then by the tens of thousands in the 80s. The estimates were into the millions in the 90s, and it's like, where are they coming from? They diagnosed them in the secular sense and called it multiple personality disorder. It is now called DID, dissociative identity disorder, and they also recognized that the process was a trauma-based splitting human personality and the creation of separate sub-alter personalities.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Ah, weird. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Ew. Strong Brittany. Yeah, it was a weird.
And it makes me mad. It burns my britches. I believe U.S. military has embedded, dark side, programmed, high-level program super soldier types that are Luciferian oriented, they're controlled by that side. They've infiltrated military. They've infiltrated, because I've met them. We've engaged. We've done deliverance with them, and that's true in law enforcement. That's true in all areas.
That is not supposition. High-ranking officials in the military are Satanists, open Satanists, like Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. He has to be the most infamous. Although he says, oh, he's just a poor picked-on Satanist because he was an open Satanist, so everybody just wants to pin everything on him, and he really didn't do any of these crimes he's been accused of. But anyway, yes, here's a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army who was the founder of the satanic cult called the Temple of Set. The founder. It's not a theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. Here he is on the Oprah Winfrey Show, talking openly about it. This is a true story. You can see it's public knowledge. Temple of Set, there it is, pentagram, satanic. It was a branch off from Anton LaVey's Satanism. Okay, now he is not to be confused with General Michael Aquino. General Michael Aquino was an NSA intelligence officer in the Philippines, and he is in prison for what should be called treason, for turning over U.S. intelligence documents to operatives in the Philippines. So as odd as that is, there are two Michael Aquinos, both in the cabal and both in the military in different branches. General Michael Aquino of the NSA went to prison for his crimes. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, as far as I know, never got any prison time for his crimes. Oh, but hey, while I'm thinking about the Philippines, even though it was a different Michael Aquino, still evidence of the infiltration that Russ Dizdar was just telling us about, and his crimes were in the Philippines. So I want to talk about a couple of the Philippines connections that we see in addition to this whole trans agenda thing that goes on over there. That's where they used to go, everyone used to go to get their surgeries. The Philippines is a massive node or nerve center for this satanic cabal. I hope some of you have the time out there, especially you Q people. I hope you have some time to research this. Okay, so not only did the satanic general Michael Aquino of the American military go over and work at the police force of the Philippines, but also, remember Timothy McVeigh's cohort, Terry Nichols, his wife was from the Philippines. So we see a lot of handlers from the Philippines. Also, Stephen Paddock's girlfriend was from the Philippines, most likely a handler. She left, remember, immediately after the attack. There was also an assassination attempt on the Pope in the Philippines in November of 1970. Pope Paul narrowly escaped an assassination attempt in Manila, Philippines. So there is a ton going on in the Philippines. It's not just the nerve center of the world's transgender surgeries and that type of thing. There is a lot going on over there. It is a major, major hub for this satanic cult. Okay, so let's jump back to Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, because he connects to everything in every way. It's mind-boggling. From the child trafficking to the pedophilia to the psychological warfare to, I mean, he's in the middle of everything. So let's just start at the top and move our way down. For those who don't know, Michael Aquino was a psychological warfare specialist in the U.S. Army from 1968 until 1990. So that was his specialty. Not only was he the founder of the Church of Satan, or the Temple of Set, a branch off from Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, an open Satanist and a self-confessed neo-Nazi. Yes, that's what he said out of his own mouth in these interviews. Like I said, you can go back and watch the Oprah interviews and everything. All of the top New World Order celebrities had him on their shows normalizing this, back when they first coined the term satanic panic to quell the fears of the American people when they first started to wake up to this. So yeah, you can't make this stuff up. That was his specialty. PsyOps, MK Ultra, psychological warfare specialist. That's who he was. He was also sent to Vietnam to take part in the Phoenix program, which was essentially the final solution for over in Vietnam. It involved torture and all of that. It was horrible. It was the CIA Phoenix program. Look it up. Yeah, so he was involved in that. And he was also responsible for passing along faulty intelligence information. Remember, same thing with the Iraq war. Oh, well, there's weapons of mass destruction. No, there's not weapon. Well, these are the people who do it, because these guys, these intelligence agencies, these guys are in office 20, 30 years. And a president is only in office, 4 years or 8 years. So it's not the president controlling the military. Again, it's that Emperor Hirohito thing. It's the military controlling the president. And I'm not excusing and saying George Bush is innocent. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this is so common that the presidents, it doesn't matter, even if it's Donald Trump or even if it's the most perfect president in the world, he has to depend on the military to brief him on the intelligence, on what's going on in the world. So if you have a perfect president, but these people briefing him are feeding them faulty intelligence, then they're going to make bad decisions. And therein lies the problem. Okay, the next thing. His direct link to MK Ultra, Kathy O'Brien, the programmed multiple, whistleblower. Kathy O'Brien, right here, the author of Transformation of America. Of course, I think Mark Phillips was sent to handle her when she started to break down, but that's for another video. But yeah, so Kathy O'Brien specifically named Michael Aquino when she testified under oath. Look at him with his little Eddie Munster hairdo. I can't believe these are the people. These people aren't better than us or smarter than us or anything, and we outnumber them. I'm not afraid of them. They're about to come face to face with the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, and then we'll see. She testified in front of the U.S. Senate, gave sworn testimony that she was programmed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky in 1980 by Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. He was even involved in the Johnny Gosch abduction. I mean, it's just unbelievable. If you don't know who Johnny Gosch is, a lot of you have asked me to do a video that's dedicated to these children who are being abducted, these missing children who are being abducted all over the world and all over the United States. And then they show up as like celebrities' kids, or they show up as actors in Hollywood, or they show up in the political arena. Well, Johnny Gosch is one of those abducted children that people noticed. It came out, and yes, they did everything in the world they could to cover it up, but his mom, his own mother, Noreen Gosch, says that Jeff Gannon is her son because of scars and birthmarks, because after he was used for sex trafficking as a young child, his whole childhood, then he was placed as a White House reporter. That's when he got noticed, because he had no credentials, no background in being a reporter. He was just placed in there to ask these softball questions during press conferences. And people are like, well, who is this guy? So they did some checking, and he's Jeff Gannon. Well, he didn't have any credentials. So how did he get past all the Secret Service checks and all that? Well, obviously, because by this point in his life, he was programmed multiple, and this was one of his jobs. Also, he ran a homosexual porn website under another name, a third name, which was, they say, homosexual prostitution. So even though they had done this to him as a child and used him up, even as an adult, he was still sex trafficking as a homosexual adult prostitute, and ran a site like that, which he says was just porn. It wasn't prostitution. But you guys know what's going on. But anyway, this is one of those kids, and I'm going to play some of Noreen's testimony. But anyway, because she had the nude pictures of him from this homosexual porn site, she was able to identify his birthmarks and scars and say, yeah, even though he's denying it, that he is Johnny Gosch, her son, she says that is her son. So back to Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. He was also involved in the Johnny Gosch abduction, which, come to find out, was this child trafficking ring that I'll get to in a minute. But the Bonacci boy from the Omaha, Nebraska, Franklin cover-up, Boys Town scandal, and all of that, where they were trafficking those children, the Franklin cover-up, that's kind of the go-to work on that if you guys want more information on that. He was one of those children, and he helped abduct Johnny Gosch. And this was nationwide because Johnny Gosch was abducted in Iowa, and the Bonacci child was involved in the Omaha, Nebraska sting. And he testified about his involvement in that. But he was an abducted child also. And then when he got to be 17, 18 years old, he was used to lure other kids and things like that. But during his court testimony, when he was admitting to his involvement in these abductions, he named Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino as the person who ordered Johnny Gosch to be picked up. He said that they were like children to order. They would watch children getting on buses. I mean, nowadays they have Facebook and the internet and stuff, but back then they didn't. So they would watch children and they would take pictures of them at a distance and stuff. And then the pedophiles would pick which child they wanted. And I'll also talk about when I get into Noreen's testimony here in a second, that come to find out the father, Johnny Gosch's father, was involved and essentially gave them his son, was in on it. It's sickening. Okay, but this part is about the military infiltration. So Michael Aquino was also allegedly involved in at least 2 other child sex abuse cases. The first one was Jubilation Daycare Center at Fort Bragg in 1985. And that military daycare center, several children came forward and said that they were being trafficked outside of the daycare center and sent to other locations. And they identified Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino as being present at one of those locations, which was in a church. There were 2 churches that the children said they were taken to, and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino was present at one of those abuse sessions. And you guys know we've already talked about the involvement of the Catholic Church. Okay, now this is the big one. In 1986, allegations emerged regarding sexual abuse being perpetrated at the Presidio Child Development Center in San Diego. Within a year, at least 60 victims were identified between the ages of 3 and 7. And these 60 children said the exact same thing. They were being taken out of the Presidio Daycare Center when their parents left them, and they were being trafficked to these other locations where they were urinated on, defecated on, and they were sexually abused. Okay, now this one was absolutely proven because we're talking about children between the ages of 3 and 7. 5 of the children tested positive for sexually transmitted diseases such as chlamydia. Others showed clear signs of anal and genital trauma consistent with violent penetration. Even if you can write it away in your mind and say, oh, it could be trauma from this or that or the other, where would a 3-year-old child, get an STD? And again, picked out of a lineup, both Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino and his Satanist wife, Lilith, were positively identified by victims as two of their perpetrators. So in 1987, they issued a search warrant, and when they went into Michael Aquino's house, they found what they call a torture chamber. It was a soundproof room was built into their house. And it didn't, they did confiscate videos and a lot of other stuff, but this guy never went to jail. They kicked him out of the military, but as far as I know, he never went to jail for this. And this wasn't just the bases where this Satanist Michael Aquino was stationed. The U.S. Army received allegations of child abuse at 15 of its daycare centers and several elementary schools, both inside the U.S. and outside of the U.S. There were instances in Canada. There were a U.S.-run facility in West Germany. They sent people to Panama, where these elementary school children who said they were molested tested positive for HIV. This was a multinational child abuse ring. Anyway, that's enough of that. There's so much more to it, but that would take another 12 hours to dedicate this one person. But I just want to make the point that when people like Russ Dizdar say that they've infiltrated the military, this is real. This has nothing to do with tinfoil hats, and nobody can say, oh, it's because you're Christian. You're just trying to make everything about Satan. Satan's not even real. You can't say that because these people out of their own mouths are self-proclaimed Satanists. I'm not saying that. They're saying that they are Nazis and Satanists. So if you want to be in denial, whatever helps you cope, but I'm telling you the truth. And again, with the mysterious fires. A month after the raid, a fire, which the Army deemed to be accidental, destroyed the community service building that was just adjacent to the Presidio's daycare center. And remember, there were supposed to be tunnels where they were being taken out and then taken to other locations. Strangely enough, the fire occurred on the autumn equinox, a major event on the satanic calendar. The fire also destroyed the Child Development Center's records. Oh, and it's not done. 3 weeks later, another fire struck, and this time the daycare center itself burned. But I just wanted to again point out the fires. Always with the fires, mystery fires destroying the evidence. The same thing happened McMartin Preschool. Remember all of those children? They even made a movie out of this one. And they were occultists. Remember, James Woods played the attorney. He got up there and mocked how this guy would wear the triangle, the pyramid hat, and he had all the occult books, and just a mockery, nothing to see here. But anyway, yeah, the McMartin Preschool also burned down. We even see that at Bohemian Grove. Every couple of years, there'll be a cabin fire or something. Oh, it's just somebody's campfire just hopped over and burned this specific place down over in Bohemian Grove. Happens all the time out in California, those darned wildfires. Even forest fires where there appears to be no structures, because there are underground structures. And the victims of these satanic cults continually and consistently report the hunting of actual humans in these woods all around the world, especially in the Black Forest, which QAnon happened to bring up early on in the early days.
Meanwhile, Q posted this on the 5th of February, Rothschild estate sale, Black Forest. A couple of notes here. The Black Forest is a mountainous region in southwest Germany bordering France, and it is often associated with the Brothers Grimm fairy tales.
So is it any wonder? Is it just another coincidence that Grimm's fairy tales, written by the Brothers Grimm, Jacob and Wilhelm, was a German folklore book? There it is. It's German. It was compiled by these brothers. These were folklore. This was what supposedly went on in Germany. They didn't write these stories. These aren't children's fairy tales. Who could call these children's stories anyway? Oh my gosh, they're the most grotesque stories. But yeah, they didn't write these stories and make them up. What they did was compile already existing German legends and oral traditions that were passed down in their Germanic culture. And you guys know what Grimm's fairy tales are. It's all about children being hunted in the woods. It's all about little kids being put in the oven and cannibalism and eating children. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be graphic or gross, but this is what this German literature is. That's what Grimm's fairy tales is all about. And they've toned it down over the years in the multiple editions. But if you go back to the original, the first editions, they were very graphic. They've taken out a lot of things like, say, Rapunzel. They talked about, I mean, all of this was about royalty, kings and queens and princes taking people captive and holding them in cages and in rooms and castles and stuff. And in the original Grimm's fairy tales, it tells the story as it was told to them, that after a little while, this little girl said, "Why is the waist of my garment growing tight?" Because she was pregnant. So it wasn't a wonderful prince story. It was about these royalty holding these little girls captive. And how do little girls get pregnant? So surely you can see this is exactly what we're talking about going on today. This isn't satanic panic. This is the culture of an ancient cult. So I don't know how bad your cognitive dissonance has to be to dismiss all of these things. I've been going on for 2 hours now as pure coincidence again and again and again and again and again. No connection, right? All of these are just unrelated incidents. And I guess it's just another coincidence that after all of these investigations started, before the other major forest fires, that the Rothschilds just sold their Austrian hunting estate in a historic deal. I mean, these types of estates, they are passed down generation to generation to generation. This isn't like the Hollywood Hills where they just give their houses away. These things stay in that would be like the Windsors selling Buckingham Palace. It just doesn't happen. They don't turn loose of these properties. That's not the way this happens. But they suddenly did and sold it for a song at that. And it was right after President Trump, look at the dates, that was right at the same exact time that President Trump signed that executive order declaring a state of emergency, saying that there were crimes against humanity, and he wanted to enact the International Emergency Economic Powers Act so that they could seize the property and assets of people arrested in these crimes against humanity. Of course, Snopes is like, "Oh no, that's not true." But of course, you know how they always twist things. They're the cabal arm of, fake news to get us off the track. And of course, they say it was just about the Obamas and the Clintons. But I'm not saying anything about the Obamas and the Clintons. I'm talking about the Rothschilds and the German forests and hunting properties that they suddenly signed over to somebody else at the exact same time. Here, this is the executive order. This is whitehouse.gov. This is the government website. I'm not making this up. This is whitehouse.gov. Go and check it out. Human rights abuse and corruption, issued on December 21st of 2017. And then boom, 30 days later, the Rothschilds dumped their hunting estate. Coincidence? Really? Ooh. A lot of these, like Hansel and Gretel, they always did creep me out, even when I was a little kid and had no idea that any of this was going on. But don't let it escape you that a lot of these fairy tales, these German fairy tales about witches in the woods and all of that, these are the very same stories that Walt Disney picked up and made all these Disney films about. I mean, just go through and look. Cinderella, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I know that I had mentioned Walt Disney toward the end of the last video, Age of Deceit 2, All the World's a Stage or something like that. But yeah, don't let this escape you then, that these German tales of witches in the woods and all of that are where Walt Disney got most of the films that they started with. And even Disney's original Magic Castle is based on the real castle in Bavaria, Germany. What is it? Neuschwanstein Castle? I'm sorry, I can't speak German, but you get my point. And you can just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into the deep state. It never ends. So like the CIA, their 7 supercomputers, they named them the 7 dwarfs. It's old technology now, but here's the Black Forest, IBM's row of supercomputers, the black cubes, the black boxes. But my point is, as we all know, These occultists have a reason why they name everything. Everything links together. Everything makes sense. Nothing is random. You know, now we have the D-wave quantum computer, which is delta brain waves, which goes back to the Montauk Project. I talked about that at the very end of the first Age of Deceit, Transagenda, and Breeding Program video. The delta brain waves, how they're lying to us about what the sleep state is, and they had the delta T antenna during the Montauk Project doing time travel, and Donald Marshall's testimony about being abducted in quote-unquote REM sleep. So there's a lot going on with this interdimensional. This is a quantum computer. This is an they say themselves, this is an interdimensional computer. And all of these names have meaning. It's right in front of our face. You know, the figurehead for this runs around in a shirt and their company logo, that's the Ouroboros, the serpent, and the company's called Kindred. Kindred, they're openly saying it's their family. They're the family. They're the ones running this stuff. I mean, here he is, Geordie Rose. Look behind him on his presentation. We are hiring demonologists, software engineers. Join us. They put it's right in front of our face. We are hiring demonologists. And then it goes on. You've seen, I've done a ton of videos where I show the actual clips where he goes on to say exactly what they're doing. They tell us to our faces what they're doing. They're breaking down these dimensional barriers for this black awakening to be the inversion of Christ's outpouring of the Holy Spirit. They are going to open the abyss and allow an outpouring of those demons. And they're hiring demonologists. So there you go. And of course, the Rose family tree, this is Ancestry.com, can be traced to the Ashkenazi Jews, the German Roses, the Yiddish Royce, as in Rolls Royce. So this is the Black Forest in Germany. And you can see the bunkers and cages are still there. These don't look like they've been used anytime soon. The stairwell's open, or yeah, anytime recently, I mean. There's the stairwell. But they're everywhere. There's one up there on the hill. There's another one back here, up on this hill. And it's not just Germany. The SRA whistleblowers, whether it's Fiona Barnett or all of them who talk about these sadistic hunting rituals, report it going on in Britain and in the United States, especially in the forests on the West Coast, not just Bohemian Grove. Like I just talked about with the founder of the satanic cult, Michael Aquino, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, he was stationed on the West Coast, and there was a ton of that neo-Nazi satanic activity around him and those bases on the West Coast. And of course, the Michael Aquino connection being out in San Diego is no coincidence, because here is a naval barracks just outside of San Diego, California, and it's obviously built, the architecture is built as a swastika. It was the naval base in Coronado. And I talked about this in the Q series. They did finally tear it down after people became aware of it and threw a fit. First they tried to mask it, and then they finally did tear it down. But we talked about this in the last video, how they put these sigils all around us. But these are massive. And this goes back a long, long time. I mean, just the Pentagon itself. It's a pentagon. It's a pentagram. Our entire military industrial complex runs from the sigil of a pentagram. Likewise, the entire layout of Washington, D.C., even the roads, the directions that the roads run and where the buildings are placed, it's a pentagram. And then there's Moloch the owl, like Bohemian Grove. So think about how far back this goes to when the engineers actually designed the road systems and everything in Washington, D.C. And I know it's heartbreaking. The awakening is heartbreaking. I grieved for 2 full years when the Lord opened my eyes and I realized where I was, that I was living in a world that wasn't my own. But the good news is we are just passing through. We're not stuck here. They're stuck here. They're creating this hell around us for, they think us, but we're not sticking around. We're just passing through. We're just here on a rescue mission to grab the souls of our brothers and sisters, and then we're going to go back to the higher dimensions in heaven with God. And they are falling. Their frequency is flatlining. They are falling to the lower dimensions. So there's no doubt the world that they're creating is not going to be utopia, but we don't have to despair or be in fear. 1 John 5:19, we know that we are children of God and that the whole world is under the control of the evil one. So the Bible's been telling us for millennia before we were ever awake and actually believed what it said, that this world is under the control of Satan. Their empire has been set up all around us, right in plain sight. We don't even observe any of the Hebrew biblical feasts anymore. We observe all pagan holidays. Every city is covered in the pagan statues. It's endgame. They have it set up. They're ready to launch. One of the brainwashed masses' favorite pagan idols is the Statue of Liberty that has nothing to do with liberty. This is what it has to do with. The high priest of Baal's wife, Ishtar. So who is this person? Let's take a look. This is Attis, a castrati, one of the sodomites. It's the sodomite temple priests of these fallen angels, the castrated Attis. They wore this, the men would put on makeup and they would all put on these sort of crown looking things like that. That was their ritual, their sodomite ritual in the temples. This is Attis, the high priest of Baal and Ishtar. Again, making sense of the trans agenda. Have you ever thought? I have, lots of times. I look at the Statue of Liberty and I'm like, she don't look like a Lady Liberty to me. She looks like a man. Looks like a man. And the reason why the face was sculpted as the face of a man is because Attis was a man. A castrati, a castrated man, but born a man. Without the long hair on it, kind of looks like Elvis's face. It has nothing to do with a symbol for America at all. It was created by a French Freemason and placed in our harbor. But the Statue of Liberty is just one of zillions. I mean, just look, you could take a walk through New York and the pagan gods are everywhere. Statues of the pagan gods are everywhere. Go to Rockefeller Center, right? And what do you see? Oh, Prometheus right there in Rockefeller Center. I bet that's a big coincidence. They've just openly set up their pagan satanic society all around us and we're living in it. We're in it. And 98% of us don't even know it. Don't even know it. Because we were born into it. We were born into the final stage of this. So now, instead of just these ancient gods all around us, they've gotten way more blatant. So they're externalizing the hierarchy. They're putting up the Arch of Baal in the major cities in multiple nations. They are putting the Baphomet up with the little children looking up to the Baphomet. Satanism, open Satanism. And even if you can be duped into believing that all of those statues of Satan himself, the Baphomet, you might think, oh, those are just some radical Satanist groups just trying to get some attention. But even if you're still buying into that, you can't deny the Arch of Baal going to Italy and Washington, D.C. and Dubai and New York. These are major politicians and heads of state involved in this Arch of Baal thing. It's going to The Hague. I mean, these are power brokers doing this, not a bunch of kids who run a Wiccan bookstore. And they're running it around, putting it on the circuit, telling everybody it's a symbol of peace. That this demonic gateway, I mean, Baal was, oh gosh, the things, the child abuse, the child sacrifice, everything that, I mean, Baal of all the, how could that be a symbol of peace? How could any diplomat, any politician, any head of state think that anything to do with Baal could be interpreted as a symbol of peace? One of the most vile, disgusting, perverse, violent entities recorded in all of world history. But I guess that's the problem, is that they've dumbed down our kids so much in public education, the re-education camps, the public indoctrination system, to where they've made them so ignorant of true world history that all you have to do is put on their iPhones, their iPads, or their whatever, their Snapchats or whatever, that this horribly violent child murdering Baal is a symbol of peace. And they don't know because they don't have anything to contrast it against. They just believe whatever the media tells them. They're like, oh, did Kim Kardashian go? Well, yeah, for sure. It's all about peace. I'm going to put on my pink vagina hat and I'm going. Yeah, it's about peace. All about peace and love for sure. I heard it on the TV. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time rehashing the androgynous aspect of this sex cult, but I did want to touch on something that Truthstream Media put up the other day that goes along with exactly what I was talking about in the last two videos. And their video is called, Does Society Realize It Is Being Initiated? They're being initiated into a cult. And so they're showing how all of this stuff has gone mainstream. Oh, we're so illuminated. People are wearing it openly and becoming a part of it, because they've been unwittingly initiated into it, and they become defenders of the cult. But as far as the transgender and the bisexuality and the androgyny part of the sex cult, they gave the perfect example that went right along with what I was saying in that section where I talked about American Idol and how we worship these people. This is the way they've set themselves up as gods over us, and the way that we worship them, even though a lot of people won't admit they worship them. Well, they went to a Smashing Pumpkins concert, and I just have to show you this, because if you thought what I was saying was a stretch, this concert, they do it openly. It's crazy. And as always, I will put this link below in the description box if you guys want to go watch the whole video. It's 47 minutes long, and it's worth the watch. Everything that Melissa and Aaron do is worth the watch. They're fantastic. In fact, as far as all this MK Ultra that we're talking about, their documentary, The Minds of Men, is probably the most thorough documentary that I've ever seen on the subject. And if you think you've heard all about MK Ultra and the mind control programs, you haven't heard anything until you've heard Melissa and Aaron's work. So I highly recommend you check them out. Okay, but I just want to show you a couple of clips that they have from the concert. This is pictures they took from the concert. So he starts out showing pictures of himself as a child. And I mean, need I say more? Upside down cross on the forehead, 666. Okay, so those are his childhood pictures he's showing. Obviously SRA child. Then he continues through the show, basically going through his apotheosis, declaring himself a god. The seventh ray. The seventh ray, that's Addis. That's what the Statue of Liberty, that's what we're talking about. Those hats those crowns that they wore, the sun god worship, which now we call the black sun, but that's those 7 rays. That's exactly what I just showed you on the castrati, the sodomite priests of these demons. And again, if you think I'm stretching it to say this has something to do with androgyny and the transgender agenda, watch this. Then he puts the pictures of himself up as a man and a woman on both sides with those cobra snakes, like Shiva, all around his head. These are all snakes. Then he merges the two together, male and female together, over the top of him while he performs that. Then he makes himself in a statue of, like, while he's playing this stuff, they bring out this giant statue sort of with all these cloaked, hooded, chanting looking demonic things. And spliced on the big screen in between bringing out this idol statue of himself, there's this crying drag queen looking person keeps flashing on the screen. And Aaron and Melissa said, I guess it was supposed to be praying to him. But look at this. To me, it looks pretty clear that it's just another image from their sex cult. It looks like there's no praying hands or anything. It's got the upside down cross on and the drag queen's head right in his crotch. So, really, you think I'm making too much out of this? That people are really duped in and being initiated into this cult? They say themselves it's a religious experience. Here's Snake Charmer, of course. I don't think enough words in existence would tell you how happy I am tonight. Tonight was truly one of the best of my life. Thank you, William P. Corgan. I spent half of your performance grinning like a fool with tears streaming down my face. I heard people behind me talking about how it felt like church. Well, it was. It was an intergalactic experience of emotions I was not prepared to see and feel and hear in person. Truly amazing. So here we are, at Save My Wretched Soul. And I tracked down the Zero statue to pay homage to his excellence as well, as requested. And she says as requested because Billy Corgan himself requested on his social media that people stop by and pay homage to him and get their picture taken with his statue after every show on the tour, which is exactly what they did. Look at this gal, Lady Love Babs. I've been blessed by my master. So this is open MK Ultra programming, mind control programming of the masses. These modern day musicians are no different than the ones they churned out of Laurel Canyon, which I discussed in the last 30 or 45 minutes of the last video I posted. This is a fact. They churn these artists out, and I use that term artists loosely, very loosely. They churn these drones out, and they get up there and they play this frequency music that puts you in a trance state, and then they implant these images in you, and then everybody walks out and goes, oh, it was a religious experience and tears were streaming down my face. I've got to find the statue and worship my master. It's ridiculous. And then they call us crazy for pointing out how ridiculous and brainwashed they are. In fact, there's an organized campaign of gaslighting. You guys know that. They do this stuff openly, just right in front of everybody. And when we point it out, then Google, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter all gaslight us and ban us. Oh, you can't be talking about Satanism. This is just, you know, you people, we have to protect the world from you people who are pointing this stuff out. It's gaslighting. It's gaslighting. They put it right in front of our face, and then when we say, hey, look, what's right in front of our face, they gaslight us and say, you people are crazy, you're mentally ill, you need meds, you know, you're conspiracy theorists, you're fake news. They gaslight us. It's an organized campaign of gaslighting. But anyway, this is all just preparation for the Black Awakening. These are bodies for demons. It's that simple. Invasion of the body snatchers. Just as surely as we are possessed by the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit lives in us, they want bodies for these demons that they are going to release during this Black Awakening. And here's where it talks about it. Revelation 9. And the fifth angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star had fallen from heaven. The star was given the keys to the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like smoke from a gigantic furnace, and the sun and the sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss. And then in Revelation 9:11, they had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek is Apollyon, that is, the destroyer. So you can see there that these ancient gods of quote-unquote mythology, they aren't all different gods. It's just every language has a different name for the same gods. So that's why all of the mythologies match up, because it's really only talking about a handful of gods. I think the Book of Enoch records there were 200. There were only 200 of these corporate spirit entities who fell. And out of that 200, it says that only 20 were leaders, were the powerful leader type angels. So that's why the Bible gives a couple of names and points out to us that it's the same angel, only in different languages. It goes by this name and that name. And then it says that is the destroyer. Because who is the destroyer? Shiva. Shiva is known as the destroyer. Doesn't get any clearer than that. And of course, for most of us, that instantly brings to mind the statue of Shiva that they put in front of CERN, which is really wild because our sister Jessica here, the conscientious observer, right while I was editing this part of this video, she posted a comment on another video about CERN. And so that immediately was like, what? What are the odds of that? She says, I had a vivid dream last night about a woman casting spells and incantations into a machine somewhere near CERN. And I saw demonic entities spewing out. It was the most detailed and vivid dream I've ever had. In my head, when I woke up this morning to my son waking up scared, which is unlike him, the words came into my head, it's coming, it's coming. and then men's hearts will fail them for what they'll see. Kept repeating in my head. I don't know if my imagination is in overdrive or if I'm being warned, but either way it felt so real. And the really striking thing is that I felt zero fear or anxiety about it. I felt calm and peace about the whole thing. And that's so true. I think I've talked about that in other Dreams and Visions videos. That's exactly one of the measures I use to discern when I'm receiving warnings from God or if it's just a nightmare or night terror from the enemy. Because, you know, when you have nightmares and night terrors, you have fear and you're running and it's stressful. But every time God shows me some sort of spiritual dream, there's no fear. It's complete calm. Like all of the ones that I've posted, standing there watching nuclear explosions rise over the horizon, all kinds of stuff like that, and complete peace. So it doesn't matter how horrific whatever I'm seeing is, I have this extreme peace and calm and understanding that this is what's coming and everything's okay. So anyway, I wanted to mention this because it was timely, and I do think it was a warning. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing that with all of us, because she had no idea. There's no way she could have known that I was right in the middle of making a video about CERN and opening these dimensional rifts and releasing this black awakening outpouring of demons. There's no way she could have known I was working on a video about that, and she leaves this comment at that exact same time on my channel. So thank you, Jesus, and thank you, Jessica, too. So you guys, like I said earlier in the video, please don't neglect so great a warning. She says, I saw demonic entities spewing out, and she heard the words, "It's coming, it's coming," which of course fits perfectly with what we've all been talking about for years about CERN and how they're trying to break the dimensional barriers and open up the dimensional barriers and find the God particle and all of that. And they're open about it, that they put the pagan god or fallen angel Shiva prominently displayed right at the entrance of the CERN complex. And those of us who are woke know that there are no coincidences, that the CERN logo is 666, these overlaid sixes, and Shiva, of course, has the serpents there all around and the flames coming out of this portal-looking thing.
Why are there 10 million first generation in the United States? What if only a third of them? What if just a third of them are intact? And when they're triggered, when they're released in their programming, like Haddock was in Las Vegas, what's going to happen when 30,000 are released in the United States all in 1 week? That's the Red Horse Prophecy, Revelation 12. That'll happen in Europe, in Canada, Australia. It's a global issue. The Bible speaks of a massive global multi-continental collapse so that a hidden regime can eventually rise, Revelation 13, out of the dust, out of the bloodshed. And part of it deals, the embedded ones are there by design, and they have their targets. They have their targets already. They need to eliminate resistors. That's first on the agenda, let alone creating the bloodshed, the anarchy in society. That's the Red Horse Prophecy all over the place. I can call it the Black Awakening, but that's Red Horse Prophecy right in Revelation 6. Peace is removed instantly, and there's all of a sudden, it doesn't say what, but it says this causes people to svadzo, not for war, svadzo, slaughter like in ritualistic sacrifice. It all begins to just break loose. That moves to the black horse collapse of, now globally the economic and the food chain, which leads to the pale horse. So by the time that's done, it's astounding. But I will say this, I've watched as programmed and demonized individuals were triggered by a code, triggered by a particular call. It depends on what the programmer created. It's like a key, like a lock. Whatever the programmer did to create that. Now, here's why I'm going to say that I do believe it's going to be a spiritual activation. Study Revelation 16. Out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the Antichrist, out of the mouth of the false prophet, demons go to the king. They go to the kings of the earth, and they supernaturally, they're able to draw them collectively at the same time to Jerusalem. So I think that when the Antichrist is released, I believe it's already set in place, like the mark of the beast and image. They all know what that is. They know that they're going to unleash that. That's their plan. That's their plot. So I believe the Antichrist is in charge of releasing a triggering, could be technological, but I believe inseparably it will be a release spiritual. And those in the underground, all the way back to the 90s, have described it that way. They describe the Black Awakening or the Red Horse event as a counterfeit to the Pentecost that we know of the book of Acts. They call it an inverted Pentecost, where the broadest global release of demonic presence, activating all these individuals, charging them, in other words, weaponizing them, supernatural powers weaponizing them, unleashing them.
Okay, so all of that from Russ was from the perspective of someone who has researched these satanic cults and been involved with the deprogramming and the deliverance and everything. Worked with the police agencies with this type of abuse and all of that sort of thing, helping them work on cases and crime scenes because he was considered an expert. Okay, so that's from a research side. Now I want to play you Sfolly's testimony, some clips of her testimony from the inside. And the interesting thing about Sfolly is that she doesn't regurgitate the same types of things that we see in a lot of these sort of famous whistleblowers on the circuit who kind of lead people right back into the New Age movement, right back into the trap sort of deal. That wasn't what she did at all. And she also contradicts this whole Zionist thing that they're always saying, you know, how we've taken it a step deeper with the Sabbatines and all of that. Well, Sfolly, that's what she said. She came out back in 1996. She's currently missing. If anybody has heard where she is or if she's still alive, please comment below. But anyway, she was one of the first ones and only ones to say this. The official language of the Illuminati is German. And she talks about, yes, the CIA is involved, and of course Mossad and, you know, all the intelligence agencies. But she says, no, they want to destroy Israel, which is exactly what we saw from Hitler and those types. So anyway, here is Sfolly's testimony of the things that she witnessed and experienced on the inside of this satanic cult called the Illuminati.
From the beginning, you were born into this from wealthy parents.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in a group. I was born in Germany, came to the U.S. very young, and basically went through all the training that the group, all members of the group do undergo training to different degrees, depending on the role. By the time I was a teenager, I was a youth leader, and by the time I was 22, I became the youngest member of Leadership Council in San Diego County. And at that time, I was a head trainer. I was the sixth trainer. I eventually moved up to the second position. You know, when you say to rule the world, it almost sounds laughable, like, yeah, right. You know, I think people get ideas of, like, thinking in their brain wanting to rule the world. But really, that is their goal. They believe that they are the intelligent leaders. They see themselves as wise leadership. So they believe that their goal is to rule the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but at the same time, they have ways of doing this. Their main methods of doing so are behind the scenes. They believe in infiltration of the media, of education, and of government. Those are the three areas, and of the financial system. And they've successfully done quite a bit of all four throughout Europe and the U.S. as well as other countries. Well, no, it's all one group, but it just has different levels. You know,
yeah, that's what I mean, like the sciences, the government.
The Illuminati is divided into different branches of learning. And these branches include sciences, military, government, leadership, scholarship, and spiritual. Those are the 6 branches of learning. And while all children need to undergo some training or teaching in each area, as they get older, they begin profiling you from infancy, and they know where your aptitudes and abilities are. Then you really go into, most people specialize in one branch or possibly 2 branches of learning.
And you were involved in what branch?
I was heavily involved in sciences, and also to some degree, I did some spiritual as well, but mainly sciences. I think the best way would be to just give you an example of just one type of training that they do.
Okay.
When I was 2 years old, I was left in a room for probably a 24-hour period. When you're that age, it's hard to estimate, but it was a long time. I know that the sun did go around at least once. You know, it wasn't just like a few hours. And at that age, when you're 2 and you're left completely alone without food and water, you're terrified. And at the end of the time, I was just dying of thirst. I remember I've never been so thirsty in my entire life. And my mother walked into the room, because a lot of times they have the children, you know, or the parents as train the children at these early ages. And there was a table in the middle of the room, and I'm sitting at, and she sits at, and she brings me this cold pitcher of water, and she starts pouring it. I said, "Mama, I want a drink of water." And she slapped me out of the chair. And I remember crying, and I'm like, and as I'm crying, and she's drinking the water in front of me, then she leaves. She takes a pitcher of water, and a couple of hours later, she came back in and did the same thing. I said, Mama, I want water. And she slapped me, across the room. After this had happened about 3 times, luckily I was bright enough that by the 3rd time she came in, I remember crying silently. I just looked at her. I didn't ask. And after she got up and left with the pitcher, then a man came into the room. He said, "You did very well that time." And then he gave me a drink of water. And I've always, that was part of the learning not to want stage. And looking back on it, I realize now as an adult that the purpose of that training was to teach me not to recognize my own physiological needs and respond to them. And when I was 12, I had mentioned with you the ceremony at the Vatican. That they really do make all leadership in the group undergo at some point.
You were told at a very young age you were special, you were chosen, correct?
Well, they tell everyone in the group that they're special and chosen. And in fact, that's one of the things that made me very cynical when I was older, is that, you will never meet a person who's an Illuminati who's not been told and programmed for years that they're special, they're the only one that can do things for quote-unquote family.
So you reach the age of 12, and then you're told by your parents you're going to an induction ceremony in the Vatican. Can you tell us how that happened and what occurred at that ceremony when you went there?
Okay. This isn't easy to talk about, as you know. When I was 12, I was flown over to Germany, and I was at, I'll call them the German Father's house over there. And there was some preparation for a few days beforehand, and I was told that there would be a very important ceremony, and it was considered a sealing ceremony at that point. And basically, I was told a little bit about what I was expected to do during the ceremony. When we got there, we went to the Vatican. There's underneath the Vatican, there's a large room that I described to you when we talked before. It has 13 catacomb chambers leading into it and what they do is they, as you go down these steps into the room, you can see that it's almost circular, and so they're all around it, and they bring out the mummies from the catacombs, and they set them beside each one, and they say that the spirits of the fathers watching over the ceremony. And during the ceremony, there was a large table in the center of the room. It was on top of a huge golden pentagram, and they had a ceremony there.
Okay, now how many other children were with you being inducted into the family or the order, as they call it?
There were 2 other children at that point, but there were several adults too.
Okay.
See, the church also brings in adults to swear their allegiance too. Just so you know, I was told, and I don't know if this is true, but if you want to rise to a certain position within the Catholic Church hierarchy, you do have to go through that ceremony as well.
Okay, so you're down in this room with your parents weren't present.
No. The German father and the French father were. Yeah.
Okay, and at that point, tell our listeners what you witnessed.
Well, there was a table. It looked like dark glass in the center of the room. It was made of stone, but it was very shiny and dark and black. And it may have been something like obsidian or onyx. I'm not sure. I'd have to That's the only time I've seen stone like that. And it had, like, around the corners, they had, like, these gold, I guess, channels that you know, to collect fluids. And little boy was in the center of the table and drugged. I think he was drugged because he was very quiet. He didn't move or say anything during the ceremony.
This was a little 3 or 4-year-old boy.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they continued to go ahead. They continued to do a child sacrifice
Yes,
right in front of you.
They did. Yes. Yeah, I told you about that before. Yeah.
I just what went through your mind? I guess when that happened. I mean,
I was terrified. I mean, I was absolutely horrified. I can't describe the terror you feel when you go through something like that. The man was in scarlet. He was speaking in Latin, and basically he was saying, you know, please accept the sacrifice, you know, on this day. But then, you know, and then he said the sacrifice will seal the ceremony, and then he did it. Again, I was so terrified that. Have you ever been in a situation where your heart's racing, but you can't do anything, and so you're just kind of sitting there and you're kind of like fading in and out?
Well, you know, I can remember as a youth being frightened, but I don't think I've ever
no. All right. Well,
gone through anything quite like what you
yeah,
have.
imagine your heart rate going up to about 220. You can't move, so you're kind of shaking, but trying like not to show it.
Mm-hmm.
And it, I mean, it was horrible. And I was keep thinking inside, I can't wait it's over. I can't wait. I mean, you don't say this, but inside you're just kind of saying over and over, I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. Afterwards, the man in scarlet, he had a huge golden ring on his hand, and he came over to the center of the room, and he had each of the people that were swearing that day. I had to go forward and kneel before him and kiss his ring and swear my allegiance to the new order, to the new world order, until my death.
Now, at that point, you are escorted out.
Yes. Yeah. After the ceremony was all over. I mean, the other people also did theirs as well. You know, they had to swear their allegiance too. And then
they were what, the same age as? They were the same age as you?
The 2 children were, but there were also 3 adults that went forward and did the same. And afterwards, we were told, may the same to you or worse occur should you ever break this oath.
Okay, so you're probably already starting to see the similarities of the things we see trickle down through the Masonic lodges. But hopefully you're also starting to see the connections to the mafia families. The same thing, the kiss the ring. There are fathers of the houses, godfathers. So she talks about, even though the Bavarian branch and the paperwork and stuff was Illuminati, that they talked about illumination and that type of thing, but they called themselves either the family or the order. And the heads of those households were the godfathers. So you see, that's very similar to what we see in the mafia. They call themselves the family, and the heads of each region is a godfather. And even though we consider that a massive crime syndicate, that is more like the lower level hitmen for the family. They do the actual legwork, the drug running, the gun running, the human trafficking. They're the people who actually do the work. The real godfathers are something much bigger, which we'll get into in just a second. I just wanted to point out that godfather and family, mafia style network, so you can have a frame of reference for how this thing functions. But make no mistake, this isn't a corporation or a business. This is spiritual. That's why they put God in front of the Father, Godfather. This is a religion to them, but they sincerely believe that by completing this training, this thing they do, that they become the gods of this world. And to do that, they need to embody the literal gods, the pagan gods. So when they split these personalities through trauma-based mind control, they demonize each personality. They're allowing for the human body to be a channel or a vessel for a legion of demons. This isn't just about them programming multiples like a Manchurian Candidate. No, they are demonizing every single split because that's the way they believe they become gods. It's exactly like the androgyny. They have to be male and female in one. That's what they believe. And then when you take that to the next level, just like Jesus Christ, we are the body of Christ. So we may be 1 billion members in one body. That's a God. He's the Son of God. And that's what they believe they become when they take a vessel and they shatter that consciousness into 1 million pieces, that they can then demonize each facet. Then they are above us because they're not just one spirit, soul, and body. They are legions inside their body, which is the same thing we see trickle down into the New Age movement. That's what they teach. That if you just keep inviting more and more of these spirit guides and you just keep getting possessed and channel more and more and allow them to use your body, that you will eventually become a god. The New Age movement was created by these Luciferians. And now you can see that in pop psychology too, because we know MK Ultra is infamous for psychotherapy. They are the doctors who have been doing all of these experiments and writing all these manuals and everything for everybody. So now we have this pseudo psychology, this psychotherapy that is based on Luciferianism. So when somebody comes in with multiple personality disorder or DID, they teach them to integrate with those spirits. That's their idea of therapy. Where if you would go to Jesus Christ, he would cast them out and say, take control of your life again and cast all those other spirits out. And psychotherapy is exactly the opposite. They say, no, invite them, integrate with them, become one with them.
They have a very spiritual orientation. They're Luciferian. But the ultimate goal of their spiritual philosophy and their steps of discipline is they believe that should you complete all of your training, that you become a god. That is their actual end goal. Is they believe in the achievement of godhood, of a luminous philosophy, through different means, through what they call enlightenment or illumination, which is how they got their name. I was a good mom. I was your average American housewife. I mean, on the surface.
Okay.
But underneath the surface, then my husband and I would remind each other on nights when there was a meeting. When we go to sleep, I had programming in place that would allow me to wake up within 10 minutes of a specified time. So if I knew there was a meeting that night, I would wake up 10 minutes before it was time to, get ready and go. A lot of times we would even go to bed with our clothes on. And I never thought that was abnormal, I thought everyone went to bed with their clothes on. Didn't even question it, on nights when we had meetings. I thought, oh, it's warmer. And then we get up and go and drive to the meeting. And I was also very involved in military in San Diego. In fact, the group has a lot of military orientation. And so a lot of times I would take the kids to their area. There's the area where the kids would go and change. They had a room, and we would have, baskets of clothes, and we'd change our clothing. You'd take out your clothing, it had your name on it, and put on your uniform or whatever you wore that night. And the kids would wear these little miniature military uniforms. And then they would go out and do their training exercises. They were learning how to march, how to shoot. All kids in Illuminati know, at least in that area, know how to take apart a gun, put it together, and shoot with deadly accuracy by the age of 8 years old. Martial arts, there's a lot of martial arts training. Sometimes I help supervise that, or fill in if a military trainer was, because you had to know how to do it. Everyone had to be. There's a lot of cross training, but most of the time I supervised the training. I would be working on implementing programming or what we call tuning up. Reinforcing previously installed programming in adults. At that point, I was normally supervising the younger trainers. They would be doing it, and I would be there watching and making sure they did it correctly. Sometimes, every once in a while, we'd be working on something that was somewhat experimental, and then I would be taking a more active role, assessing the person's responses to the new protocol, recording it, and And if there was any difference between established parameters for that protocol or expected responses, I'd be flagging that. I can tell you that in San Diego, 20% of the active members of the group were active military. Okay, and think military intelligence, think high-ranking officials, colonels, commanders. My ex-husband was a lieutenant commander in the Navy, getting ready to become a commander, okay?
I'm looking at some of the chapters in a book you have yet to publish. I mean, we're talking about brainwave, color control, metal, jewel programming linked to stories of movies. I mean, it goes suicidal program.
I'm going to sound very cynical now, and please forgive me for this, but see, their goal is to rule the world, and personally, I believe that they do. It's just not open yet. And they see now preparing people for when they disclose it themselves openly. Does that mean that they can't be stopped? I believe they could. I believe it'd take a miracle because of the amount of infiltration I've seen at all levels of society and the world. So basically, I mean, I think that they're already there. They just aren't open. These people just don't know what they're doing. If they did, I think the average person would be horrified to know how much is going on behind the scenes that people really don't know.
Yeah, and the point of this interview, I had two goals in this interview.
But I don't want to sound despairing because I'm also a strong Christian. I have faith in God, and I believe that through prayer and through people knowing that, I mean, I would like them to be stopped. Again, if you can think of an illegal activity, they're probably involved at some point. Maybe not overtly at the point of where the actual money is first changing hands. But when you have child pornography, prostitution, white slavery, gun running, gambling, then at some point where the money is changing hands, buffered by about 4 layers of people, there's going to be probably someone from the Illuminati involved. These guys have their fingers in everything. But they also use legitimate means. They launder their money. I mean, when you have a lot of money, you have to do something with it. And so what these men don't come in and say, hi, I'm a member of the Illuminati and I want to run your bank. But what they'll do is they'll quietly come in and become a quiet investor, start buying up shares, and over a period of maybe almost a lifetime, they will get a controlling interest in the bank. And maybe in their son's lifetime, because that's the other thing about Illuminati. The Illuminati do not see it as it must happen now in my lifetime. These people have goals that last for a century or 2 centuries. They're very, very patient.
And that's why the specific training of the children is so important, correct?
Yes.
Chris in Washington, you're on the Investigative Journal.
Based on the information that you're presenting, I'm wondering what timeline the organization of the larger family that you're describing has for implementing the New World Order.
Okay. I was told it would occur during my generation, that they would be revealed. Now, again, their timelines change, though. In fact, I think jokingly referred to them as being like the Soviet Union because, you know, how they had their 5- and 10-year plans and then things always got changed. In my own lifetime, I saw several different timelines for things that were supposed to occur change. But as Greg noted, I've also heard of from different people that actually there's a huge push in the last few years. It's like, it's close, let's make things happen more quickly. So I couldn't begin to guess whether that's an accurate timeline or not. I know what I was told. They're international. At the top levels, it's in Rome. That's the center or the heart of the Illuminati. That's where the power base is. And that's why all leadership must wear fealty in Rome, because that's considered the core of the spiritual center of the universe, is how they view it. From there, in Europe, there are 12 fathers, one for each country in Europe. When I was younger, too, I had to also meet with the fathers at one point and kiss their rings and go through another ceremony of allegiance to them as well. There's in the Illuminati, the European fathers, though, rule over what are called the different houses. For instance, if you're from Germany, then you belong to the German house. If you're from France, you belong to the French house. They call them houses. UK, Russia, Poland, Belgium, Spain, Italy, and others. From there, America was considered a mission field for them. And in the 1600s, Pittsburgh became the first port of entry for them, and that's where they first settled. And so that's why it's still considered a spiritual power base for the group on the East Coast in the U.S. From there, it spread out, of course, to the Atlantic seaboard and then throughout the nation. And while the nation is divided into many regions, multiple regions, 7 main regions, the East Coast region has its spiritual power base in Pittsburgh, but the administrative power base is in Alexandria, Virginia. That's where they administer the finances or the day-to-day operations. The West Coast, or the West region, or west of the Mississippi, has its power base in the San Diego area.
And that's where you spent a lot of time, correct?
Yes. I was sent from the Alexandria Council, sent me to San Diego. They are very expectantly awaiting He who is to come. And during that ceremony in the Vatican, I on my knees, I had to swear my allegiance to serve He who is to come.
Okay, so like I mentioned in the last video, that this is deeper than the deep state. What we're considering the deep state is literally the tip of the iceberg. Now, I don't know if you heard her because they were going to a commercial break there and the music cut in, but she said they are awaiting the one to come. And of course, we know that is the Antichrist. That's what we call the Antichrist. The entire Illuminati pyramid is a mimicry of the throne of Jesus Christ. So their entire family structure is the satanic version of God's family. And our Messiah is Jesus Christ, the Son of God. So their Antichrist is essentially a mimicry or an imposter of the same thing. Now, last month, I just put up this video on that exact topic. It's called Mysteries of the Age to Come, Genetically Engineering Moses and Jesus. Now, in their eyes, that would be prophet and Messiah. But in our eyes of these genetically engineered clones, these beasts that they're creating, that would be the false prophet and the Antichrist. So if you haven't seen that, you might want to go back and watch that video, because that's the introduction on this part that I'm talking about right now. And I don't want anybody to get me wrong. I say it in this video, but I'll say it again now. I'm not saying that the DNA taken from the Shroud of Turin that people are saying is Prince William. Prince William is a genetically engineered person from that DNA. I'm not saying that I subscribe to that theory. And likewise with Barack Obama being engineered from the DNA of Akhenaten. I'm not saying that I subscribe to that theory that Barack Obama and Prince William are the two. But what I am saying is these are perfect examples of what they are doing. You just heard her testimony that they brought out the mummies from the catacombs for these ceremonies. And I've done many videos over the last several years on that. Why did we go into Iraq? To recover the remains, to recover those mummified remains were hauled out. And the Egyptian mummies that were retrieved. All of this stuff that they say were grave robbers, they weren't grave robbers. These were the Templars. They went around specifically retrieving the artifacts and the remains for the Vatican. You heard her say the spiritual center is Rome. They have the archives. They're the spiritual center of this, which exactly matches Bible prophecy. Revelation 17:9, this calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 hills on which the woman sits. The woman referred to there is the whore of Babylon, the whore that rides upon the beast system. And of course, the city of 7 hills is Rome, the 7 hills of Rome. The 7 hills of Rome is a group of hills on or about which the ancient city of Rome was built. So thus far, everything Spali has said matches up with Bible prophecy. Okay, but in addition to Rome, I'd like to point out a couple other important places she named. Of course, San Diego. We already talked about that with Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino and the child abuse and everything that was going on out in the West Coast. The other one was Alexandria, Virginia, she said was a power base. Okay, so that location stuck out in my mind, thinking about these hybrids. We're talking about all of this genetic engineering. And there was an incident with one of these hybrids that they claimed was an alien, right? That was written about in a book back in 1967 called Stranger at the Pentagon. And it was supposedly an account about a blonde-haired, blue-eyed entity person named Val, who came and met with human leaders at the Pentagon back in, I believe it was 1958. Now, there's several things that stand out about this story about Val, this visitor. To me, it clearly smacks of this UFO disclosure, this great deception. Because firstly, he came saying that, oh, he came from this spaceship, but he emerged out of where? Alexandria, Virginia, which you just heard Spali testify was their satanic occult headquarters. So Val emerges out of Alexandria, Virginia, with this story that he's come from outer space, right? And his craft just landed there. So now we have all the people in the truth community who understand that UFOs and interdimensional crafts and all this stuff are real. Now they're all misled right back into this UFO disclosure New Age movement. But to those of us who are awake and have read the censored, banned, forbidden book called the Holy Bible, we know that these traits that Val had are exactly what are recorded in the Nephilim species, the Nephilim races in the Old Testament. That Val had 6 fingers on each hand. For example, in the book of Chronicles, where it talks about the Gittites, and it says they were a race of people with 24 fingers and 24 toes, 6 on each hand and 6 on each foot. And of course, like I mentioned in the other video, that is a trait that still pops up in the human race, in the human bloodlines from the contamination of the human gene pool. We call it polydactyl. But in addition to that, it's clearly part of the genome that these quote-unquote alien races, these Nephilim races, are using in their genetic engineering programs. We see it again and again, not just Val, the stranger at the Pentagon, but even in things like the alien autopsy video, which was supposed to be leaked footage from the UFO crash. And I'm not going to get into whether that's real or not. It's really irrelevant. I just wanted to bring it up because I thought it was worth mentioning that the creature portrayed on the table in that film did have the 6 fingers. And then, of course, we just had that controversy when they unveiled the official portrait of Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, that there was this esoteric hidden 6th finger painted onto his left hand, which for those of you who study the occult, you know the left hand path is the Satanism. So it's up for debate. But yeah, a lot of people believe that they painted a semi-hidden 6th finger on his left hand for some reason. Okay, so back to the stranger at the Pentagon. He spoke 100 languages fluently, basically all of the human languages and other creatures' languages. And he had a lifespan of almost 500 years, which we also know matches the Old Testament and matches all of the genetic engineering that these people are doing to try to make themselves immortals by sidestepping God. He also had an IQ that was estimated around 1200, which is just ridiculous. But if you remember the vision that I played for you earlier from Change Is Coming channel, that she was shown that these super soldiers have these incredibly high IQs. Now, we've also seen that in the elite cults. Remember the Nexium cult, where Keith Raniere and Allison Mack were arrested for taking all of those women as slaves and branding their initials into their flesh and all of that, you know, human trafficking, disgusting stuff that we see amongst the celebrities. Yeah, so you can't say I'm stretching it to say this thing is a sex cult when they call it a sex cult. I mean, this is Vanity Fair. This is as mainstream as you can get. And even they admit that it's a sex cult involving celebrities and elitists. and human trafficking, based out of New York and California. I guess he was arrested in Mexico, though. And again, that's not something that Allison Mack made up. That's something that they were raised in. That's what these SRA families, these Illuminati families, do in their human trafficking rings. The same exact thing happened to Johnny Gosch in that child pedophile sex trafficking ring. They branded all of the children that the sex cult abducted. Well, Keith Raniere has an IQ of 240. Which doesn't sound like a lot compared to this quote-unquote alien, but let's keep it in human perspective. Keith Raniere's IQ was 240. Albert Einstein's IQ was 160. And Bobby Fischer, the phenomenon, the chess phenomenon super genius, his IQ was only 186. So this Keith Raniere that was arrested for human slavery, his IQ was 240. And that's, again, what we see with this genetic engineering program with super soldiers and people like this Val. Another thing that stands out to me is this Val, this stranger at the Pentagon, is that Val was a nickname they gave him for the name he called himself, which was Valiant Thor. I know the name makes you chuckle now because we all think of the predictive programming. We think of these superhero movies, but we have to remember that the name Thor didn't come from a superhero movie. The name Thor came from the ancient archaeological records of these fallen angels in the antediluvian world. So again, I know it's hard to think straight with everything Hollywood has put in our brains, but yes, when we hear the name Thor, we should think of the ancient gods, the fallen angels, the demigods, the godfathers. So when we see these immortal type, these people who say they live for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years show up calling themselves names like Thor, that's something that we should probably take a look at in the context of like everything I've been talking about. That there are powerful satanic cults running the world, and they have genetic engineering and all sorts of high technology that they are using to engineer bodies, and they believe that they are the gods because then they invite those disembodied demons into them, into themselves and their offspring and their genetic creations. And at the highest levels, they openly say and truly believe that they are the gods and that it was their job to resurrect the quote-unquote ancient ones, the gods of ancient times, and that's what they've done. And by resurrecting them and becoming them and embodying them, then they become the gods of this world who pull the puppet strings, and they control everything. They socially engineer all of the events. They control everything. The weather, the minds of men, all of the industries, all of the money. They are the creators. They create the trends. What you wear was created by them. What you buy was created by them. What you watch, therefore what you think, was created by them. They become the ascended masters of this slave race of humans. It's exactly what the ancient texts record about the fallen angels, about the pagan gods in ancient history. That's how they saw humans. They were a slave race. They controlled everything. Appease them or you will pay, right? And that's their mafia lifestyle. They think the power of life and death is in their hand. If you're Andrew Breitbart or you're JFK or you're anybody who stands in their way, they decide appease the gods or the power of life and death is in their hands. So Valiant Thor isn't the only one of these quote unquote ascended masters. Like the writings of Manly Hall recorded Count Saint Germain, who was said to be immortal, but he was recorded in verifiable texts from several different cultures all around the world. He visited the royalty and the aristocracy of every major nation. And those records span hundreds and hundreds of years. So there's where the mystery came in. People started to realize, wait a second, this is the same guy recorded here, but 500 years later, he's also recorded in travels in India and that type of thing. So how is this possible? So it became a sort of legend that he was immortal. There is a record of him dying in Germany, of course, But a lot of people say that was one of those fake death things. But even with that death record in Germany, if that's true, still it would have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years that Count Saint Germain was alive.
However, no one succeeded in discovering why he appeared as a Jacobite agent in London, as a conspirator in Pittsburgh, as an alchemist and connoisseur of pictures in Paris, or as a Russian general at Naples. Now and again, the curtain which shrouds his actions is drawn aside, and we are permitted to see him fiddling in the music room at Versailles, gossiping with Horace Walpole in London, sitting in Frederick the Great's library at Berlin, or conducting illuminist meetings in caverns by the Rhine.
Again, did you notice the records of his life say that he taught illuminist meetings in caverns by the Rhine? And this is in the early 1700s. And that's precisely what we hear from the occult Nazi regime, that Himmler and his top Nazi SS officers who sat around their round table in their occult castle, that they not only went all over the world trying to gather up the Spear of Destiny and other artifacts, but they also went into the caverns to meet with, quote unquote, the ascended masters. You know, they went to Tibet and everywhere trying to gain all of this ancient knowledge to track down the Aryan race, which they believed were the remnant of the Atlanteans. In the 1900s, just 70, 80 years ago, they were meeting in caverns with these ascended masters from the underworld in these caverns, which is exactly what was recorded in the 1700s. So this stuff predates the CIA and Mossad and all of that stuff. Plus, Himmler and all of these heads of their regime, they believed that they were the reincarnation of past warriors and emperors and great people in history, which again harkens back to this SRA generational teaching of demon possession, which they call embodying the spirits of the gods, which they believe is embodying the spirits of the gods and demigods. But it's demon possession. That's what it is.
Nothing is known concerning the source of the Comte de Saint-Germain's occult knowledge. Most certainly, he not only intimated his possession of a vast amount of wisdom, but he also gave many examples in support of his claims. When asked once about himself, he replied that his father was a secret doctrine and his mother the mysteries. Saint-Germain was thoroughly conversant with the principles of Oriental esotericism. At various times he admitted that he was obeying the orders of a power higher and greater than himself. What he did not say was that this superior power was the mystery school, which had sent him into the world to accomplish a definite mission.
So another one of these so-called immortals is Maitreya. They call him Lord Maitreya. This is supposed to be a picture of him, I think from Nairobi. But he supposedly pops up from time to time and just materializes in front of the crowds and everything. And this is Benjamin Creme, who became his cult leader, his sort of spokesperson, and created this cult around him, because that's what they do. They have like NXIVM is not their only cult. And you know, we talked about the Manson family, right? The Manson family in the last video, but they have lots of them. I'll talk about one of the Mormon cults here in just a second. But yeah, so this is one of the cults that sprung up around these ascended masters. The weird thing is this Benjamin Creme has been so defunct, but yet the Lord Maitreya thing still continues on. The New Agers still worship him as an ascended master. And the thing about the appearance of Maitreya here is he came and was pretending to be Jesus Christ. He went to this church. He supposedly materialized to this church saying that he was God. It's him, this guy here. So then you have this sect of Christians who are worshiping this Maitreya guy saying that that's Christ. And that ties right back into a part of the Valiant Thor story that I haven't brought up yet, which is the fact that he claimed to be an ambassador of Jesus Christ. Yeah, when he showed up out of Alexandria, Virginia to meet with the world leaders, he said that he sought certain people out because they were devout followers of Jesus Christ. And he was like this ambassador of Jesus Christ from Venus or something. Just like Maitreya showed up and he's like, "Oh, I'm Jesus Christ." Also, it's become very common for UFO abductees to report seeing Jesus inside a flying saucer or Jesus inside a UFO and that type of thing, which is exactly what the cabal is teaching in their New Age cults. That's typical in the New Age movement. They even call them ascended masters, as a hodgepodge of all these demons from ancient times, or the ancient pagan gods, mixed in with all these quote unquote aliens, these Nephilim hybrid clone creatures, which of course is straight out of the Satanist, the witch, or the occultist, Madame Blavatsky. This is straight out of her teachings. Matthew 24:27, for as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. Luke 17:24, for the Son of Man in his day will be like the lightning which flashes and lights up the sky from one end to the other. If you jump up a little higher in the book of Matthew and read it in context, he goes further to say, so if they tell you, there he is in the wilderness, do not go out. Or here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. So if they say he's in the Pentagon, or if they say he's in a UFO, or they say he's Maitreya in Nambia, it doesn't matter. It's not him. It's not him. Do not believe it. Jesus said, he warned us. See that I forewarn you. It literally says that in the Bible. Jesus Christ himself literally said that in the Bible, recorded in verse 25. See, I have told you in advance. So if they tell you, there he is out in the wilderness, don't go. Here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. I have told you in advance. He warned us in advance. So when I see things like this, and it's coming out of Alexandria, Virginia, and they themselves are trying to connect it to UFOs, yeah, it sounds like part of this great deception, this UFO disclosure great deception of the Antichrist. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap it up. This is getting too long. I'm not going to get to Noreen Gosh's testimony. I'm going to have to do a dedicated video just to these abducted children who show up later on in Hollywood or in politics or the White House or these industries and that type of thing, because I really need to keep this video in between 3.5 and 4 hours, because this is a 4-part series. This video that you guys just watched, if you're at this point, is the full version, which is actually 4 parts. It's the 4 parts I've been working on for the last 2 weeks. It will be posted as 4 separate videos, which are the last 4 parts in my 10-part series. The first 3 videos in that series would be this first Age of Deceit video, which will be broken into 3 separate videos. The second 3 videos would be Age of Deceit 2, also broken into 3 videos. And then the Black Awakening is the last 4 videos in that series. So it's actually a 10-part series, which are my 10 videos for the past month. I try to get out at least 10 videos a month. I know it didn't seem like it this month because I uploaded them all together and I haven't broken them down yet. So it was like 3 super duper long videos, but it was all 10 videos in this series. I'll break them down and I'll upload them after this, so like all in a row, boom, 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 boom. And that'll make it easier for people who need to download them and stuff too. And they'll probably reach a lot more people too, because there's a whole segment of society who don't have the attention span. They would never click on a video no matter how interesting it looked. If it says 3 hours, they just wouldn't do it. So hopefully when I break them down, they will reach a broader audience as well. There's just a ton more to say on this subject. This is just scratching the surface on it. And like I said about the Johnny Gosh information, there's a lot of that really needs a dedicated video to really understand what's going on. So since I don't have time, I'm not going to dig out the clips and play them all for you right now. But I do want to point out just one thing in closing, and that is that Johnny Gosh's mom, Noreen Gosh, says that there were sections of the family structure, this Illuminati structure, who helped her, who were in the system. They were insiders, but they were defectors. They didn't agree with what these families were doing. So Noreen Gosh didn't know what she was caught up in the middle of. She was just trying to find her son. But the sheriff in her town seemed to be blocking them instead of helping them. She would have people come up to her from the other police departments in neighboring counties and say, hey, we thought we should just tell you, we volunteered our services and your sheriff told us to stand down. And then she even had people come up and say, hey, we volunteered to do search parties and they could use our bloodhounds, and your police department told us no, they didn't need it. And then she found in the computer that he wasn't even marked as abducted, he was marked as a runaway. So there, back then they didn't have the Amber Alert system. So nationwide, they had basically called off an investigation at all into him. And so she kept running into these brick walls. And you can imagine, as a regular citizen, like most of the masses, completely oblivious to how the world works, she couldn't understand. She was desperate. She was absolutely desperate to find her son. Why wouldn't anybody want to do all they could do? So she went over his head and went to the FBI, and they wouldn't help. Then she started retracing things in her mind, and things started to click. How the week leading up to before her son was kidnapped, that her husband kept getting calls in the middle of the night at like 2 and 3 in the morning. And she would say, who is that? And he's like, oh, a wrong number. But the day that her son was kidnapped, that morning, early before daylight on his newspaper route, she said her husband answered the phone and he was responding to them. He was like, yes, yes, okay, okay, yes. And she asked him again, who was it? And he's like, oh, a wrong number. I mean, you would think you could trust your husband, right? So she dismissed it. But then in hindsight, as this thing played out, come to find out he was in on it. And all the way into the Franklin cover-up and stuff, he was identified by other boys and other witnesses in other states. It's crazy. But anyway, what happened was one day she was at work and a stranger walked into her office and put his card on the table and said, I'm sorry to hear about your son. If you ever need any help, call me. And he was essentially mafia. He was the mob. He was part of the mob, and their family wanted to help because they didn't believe in what these other houses were involved in. They said, yeah, they might be involved in drugs or gambling or something, but they don't mess with children. And they were disgusted by it. So there appears to be a split. That's the reason I bring this up to close out. There appears to be a split within the family, with the family as a whole. And some of those family lines, some of those mafia lines have branched off and are actually working against the other ancient family lines. And I thought that was important to mention because right now with this whole white hats and QAnon and is Donald Trump, yeah, he's an elitist, but could he be actually trying to do good, or is this just the Hegelian dialectic and everybody's bad and there is no hope? Well, according to Noreen Gosh, there is hope. And there are insiders inside these families that, yes, they're rich elitists. Yes, they come from these families. Yes, you can trace it back and absolutely incriminate them. But at this point in history, they say that some of those families are disgusted by the human trafficking and the other elements. And although, you might consider them criminals or something in your mind, they are in fact working to bust up these child trafficking rings and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. And again, the Bible seems to support that because there are 13 bloodlines. There are 13 Illuminati families. But the Bible says only 10 of them, 10 of these family lines join forces with the Antichrist in the end times, and that 3 of them are uprooted from this system. So you have Revelation 17:12. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings. who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. So besides this verse pointing out that there are only 10 of the families, 10 of the kings involved with the Antichrist and in the very end, this also points out what I was talking about with the tip of the iceberg, that the politicians and the people we see as figureheads on the news are not these godfathers that are under the Vatican making people kiss their rings and trying to achieve immortality by this artificial reincarnation, soul transplant, cloning centers thing straight out of hell. These are not the politicians we see on the news. These are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom. So if you're looking at presidents and geographical, regional type politicians, that's not it. This is something bigger, and these people will only receive authority as kings for 1 hour along with the beast. So when this Black Awakening happens and the externalization of the hierarchy is done and they are ruling on the earth, then we will see who these are. And I guarantee they are genetically engineered with DNA from these quote unquote alien Nephilim races, and that they're interdimensional and that they have capabilities like we see the aliens have. They can resonate their frequency into the 4th dimension, and they can move through matter here in our 3rd dimension. They can telepathically communicate with people, that type of thing. Because there's no way, you guys have to realize that all of these Bible verses, and again, I love all of the prophecy experts who came before us, you have to admit that the masses aren't going to buy it if a politician just steps up. If Vladimir Putin steps up and he's like, hey, I'm God, I'm your creator. I mean, there's no way anybody would buy that. What is happening is this ancient aliens philosophy, this New Age philosophy that involves UFO disclosure, that they seeded the earth and that they're coming to save us from ourselves and nuclear war and these cataclysms. That's the great deception. So it'll be people like Thor. It will be these ancient gods. It will be these incarnations, if you will, or demon possessions of the ancient ones. Or as the cults of the Cabal teach, the ascended masters that are coming to impersonate the real Messiah. And that's why humanity will marvel after them and believe that they are the gods. The lying signs and wonders. That's what the Bible's talking about. Okay, but it's not just the book of Revelation. Also in Daniel 7, the 10 horns are the 10 kings who will come from this kingdom. After them, another king will arise, different from the earlier ones, and he will subdue 3 kings. So there's a war. There's a war in these Illuminati families, just like we see in the mafia families. There are mafia wars all the time. Even on the lower levels, they're always picking each other off. Oh, he stole money, or he did this, or he's a rat. He got caught talking about the family secrets. Knock him off. Hitmen picking everybody off. Even trying to launch coups and overthrow the Don. Overthrow the Godfather, the Don of their area, so that they can be the Don. There's no honor among thieves. But anyway, this is what the Bible says. It says that there's one rising among them, that this is the Antichrist, right? And he's different from the earlier godfathers, and he will overthrow 3 of the kings. That's how we get from 13 families involved in the Antichrist beast system down to 10. The 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. Daniel 7:8. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted. So I do believe there are white hats. I do believe there are Illuminati defectors. I do believe that people get saved out of these SRA families. I absolutely believe it. We've seen the mafia do terrible things in history, like being involved with the CIA and the communist gun running and assassination of JFK, that sort of collusion. But we've also seen certain mafia families intervene and help, like during World War II, with securing our ports because they had such control over import and export for their crime syndicate. We had to call on the mafia, and they actually allied in protecting our country. Some of the families have been known to do that. And the crime syndicate fights against itself while it's fighting against us. You'll have the New York crime family in a competition against the Chicago crime family on the lower levels, and on the larger houses, nation to nation. So although a lot of this is manipulation and orchestration and all of that, you have to admit they wouldn't have to blackmail people, right? If everybody was in on it, if every single politician was brought up in an SRA family and they were programmed multiple, they wouldn't have to get the goods on people and blackmail them, right? Because they'd all be in on it. But they're not all in on it. Yes, the infiltration is immense, but we have to get out of that reductionist mindset that everybody's in on it. No, some of these people aren't in the family at all. They're just being bribed. They're just given money to look the other way, or given money to sign this bill, or given money to do that. So they use bribery. They use blackmail. They use all of this to control and manipulate the situation. But they wouldn't have to bribe or blackmail anybody if they were all part of the family. But they're not. And in fact, that's what they want you to believe. That's part of their fear programming. They want you to think that you're massively outnumbered, but we are not. That's the truth. The truth is, like Svali says, and all of the other whistleblowers say, the Illuminati is only about 1 to 2% of the population. But yeah, I get it. Like Jay Parker says, his mother told him about the witchcraft, that it's about 12%. If you throw in all the really lower level, like all the way down here on the pyramid, you have a novice witch. Now we've got this huge Wicca thing that is blown up great big, and all these new novice coven witches who don't even really know that they're under the MK Ultra mind control and have become part of this pyramid. But if you throw everybody in, all the NPCs, you know, you throw them all in, all the blank stare people, the clones, the synthetics, the NPCs, you know, you throw them all in down at the novice level, and yeah, you're looking at 12% of the population, which is still a huge minority. We outnumber the Satanists. They want us to look around and go, oh my gosh, we're the only living souls here. Everybody's an NPC. No, we can't look at our brothers and sisters like that. They're not NPCs, the majority of them. 80 to 90% of them are not. They are in a trance. They're under hypnosis. They're under the spell of these Satanists. And those are our brothers and sisters. And we need to wake them up. And yes, because they've been made so materialistic and narcissistic and selfish and sexually perverse and all of that, I get it. I get it's hard to love them. I know that. It's hard to love them. But they are that way because they're in a cult. So think of it like it was your own child. What if your own child got sucked away into a cult? Take it like heroin addiction. And you're trying to rescue them from the heroin addiction, but they keep going back to it and they keep going back to it. You don't stop loving them. Yes, it might be hard to love them when they steal from you. It might be hard to love them when they betray you. It might be hard to see them being sexually perverse and prostituting themselves. All of that's hard. But they're not NPCs. They're people. They are our family. And they're just under the control of a cult. And that's why we're here fighting for them. And the more we wake up, the more we can wake up. And once the veil's ripped off your eyes, you can see that all of this is related, not just the school shooters, the serial killers, the cults, all of it. Just think about it. Now that your eyes are open, go back and look at the stories again. David Berkowitz, serial killer, son of Sam, what did he say? That he started going to these occult meetings and ended up being involved with these Satanists, and he was making snuff films for rich elitists. Now, back when it happened, everyone's like, okay, crazy person. Really? Richard Ramirez, serial killer, Satanist, open Satanist. Ted Bundy, serial killer of the worst kind. Although he was on the fast track through the legal and political system, well respected, a serial killer of the worst kind, a necrophiliac who revisited the corpses until there was nothing left of them almost. Unbelievable. Bundy? His name's Ted Bundy? Ring a bell? The Bundy bloodline. It's one of the bloodlines. The Bundy bloodline, right there. Number 2 on the list, the Bundy bloodline. Jeffrey Dahmer, a homosexual, cannibal, serial killer. Oh, the one thing they left out of all the mainstream news coverage was that he was a Satanist, and in his house they found a satanic altar made out of human bones. He was a practicing Satanist, a member of a satanic cult. Russ Dizdar himself saw the crime scene photos when he was working with the police departments as an SRA expert, and he was shocked. Like, why didn't we hear about this in the news? Patty Hearst, is that really a mystery? The wealthy granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst? I mean, does this sound familiar? Does this sound like what Svali was talking about? Really, she was brainwashed to commit those crimes? Yeah, she was brainwashed, all right. I'll give you that much. Look at the background with the symbolism of the multi-headed cobra, the same thing we saw over the head of the guy in Smashing Pumpkins concert, the same thing we see with the Hindu god of destruction. It's always the same. These are not anomalies. These are the evidence of this family. The family isn't just the Manson family. These are the Illuminati families. They're a cult. Okay, so back to serial killers. So here's serial killer from the Chicago Rippers. And in 1981, Robin Gett was the leader of this satanic cult in Chicago, which was responsible for the murders of 18 women. And you can read this article if you can see it on the screen. I can't read it out loud, and I really don't want to. It's disgusting. But anyway, the point is, this was a former employee of John Wayne Gacy, who, was also a serial killer who did little boys. So here's his picture. And yeah, I guess it wasn't just little boys. He was a homosexual for young men as well. And he murdered at least 33 teens and young men but before he was caught. And it was surely a lot more than that. Those are just the bodies that they found. He would bury them under his house and stuff. So like I started the video out saying there's a common thread that runs through everything as I showed the tapestry being woven. So surely you can see that that's Satanism. This is not satanic panic. This is real. These are not coincidences that all of those serial killers just happen to be Satanists, because they're here doing these after-school programs and putting up Baphomet statues with the little children looking up to him and trying to teach our children how wonderful Satanism is. They are not planning utopia. They are planning an ambush. It's called the Black Awakening or the Red Horse Prophecy. But the Holy Bible says that when evil comes in like a flood, that God will raise up a standard against it. And we are that standard. We are the Great Awakening. We are the children of God. We have the power. They are not smarter than God. They are not better than us. They are not more spiritually powerful than us, and they do not outnumber us. We outnumber them. We are more powerful than them. And we were sent here for just such a time as this. We are not victims. This is the greatest honor that God could bestow on any of his children, that we should be chosen to live in just such a time as this. We think we have faith in God, but look at the faith he has in us. Now is our time. Rise and shine, saints of God. Rise and shine.